There's a little rub and Grayson. And Moulton.
He is the gentleman who's got a few days off, and he entered into the garage, and he has nothing left. Morning. He is rebuilding a tranny.
Well, I didn't even hear you there.
He is mixing and matching sets of golf clubs to come up with just the right 14.
Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, broadcasting live from the Kobe Cooling Remote Studios, where it's always cool and comfortable.
Oh, I like it. It's up to you now. It's up to you. I like
it. Now, the best local sports show this town has ever heard. Here's Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
How the heck are you? Miller and Moulton on this first Thursday of the month. It is the 3rd of September. We are 1 week away from the National Football League. 1 week from tonight, the Texans and the Chiefs to begin the 2020 season. Big sports day and evening last night. We will have it covered for you. And then some. Top of the morning to you, Mark. How are you?
A little tired. Not going to lie. A little tired today.
Okay.
A little bit of a late night. It is, we'll move on. But you're right. It was a terrific sports night last night. And with everything going on, with all of the sports going on, you know, the one thing I don't recall us complaining about yet is the officiating. We were just so gleefully accepting of sports back that we just said,
right,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You made a bad call. That's okay.
That's all right. We'll roll with it.
We've got sports.
Right.
And last night, I watched the Heat take a 2-0 lead against Milwaukee. And, hey, that's great. Good for the Heat. They are playing really well. But it was a good game. It was an entertaining game. It got in the 110s.
Right.
And then the officials stepped in and took the final 7.7 seconds of that game and ruined it. I don't know the last time that I have seen a makeup call so atrocious to make up for the missed call before the makeup call in a matter of seconds. Usually, they have enough time to screw that makeup call up 3, 4, 5 minutes after the one they botch. But last night, they didn't have that kind of time. And yet, they went and looked at it. They went and looked at the first call, in which they have taught us in the NBA, if you put your arms over your head and you don't jump, it's not a foul. And the officials walked over, 2 of them together, looked into the monitor and came back and said 3 free throws.
All right. Here's my understanding, though. This is the end, by the way, of the Miami-Milwaukee game last night. It's 114-111, Heat, Milwaukee ball. There's a foul called on the Heat with a Milwaukee player shooting a 3. Now, my understanding, though, Mark, is when they were going over to look at it, they were just checking to see whether or not it was a 3 because the Heat had already used their challenge. For those that don't know, each team in the NBA gets to challenge a call during the game. The Heat challenged a call in the first quarter. They had no more challenges. Milwaukee had challenged a call, I think, in the third quarter when the Greek Freak was called for his 4th foul. And they challenged that it wasn't a charge, and it turned out it was. And so that's it. So in the final 7.7 seconds, my understanding was neither team had a challenge left. So once the officials blew the whistle, that's it, baby. That all they were doing was checking.
I'm not sure why we have monitors then. And I understand basketball is a sport that is subjective in all calls, but David, it was a good basketball game.
Yeah.
I mean, it was and Mind you, I didn't have the volume on the whole night. I just had it on and watched. Had a few friends here yesterday, and we watched, and we watched, and we watched, and we just stood there and went, "You really did that to us?"
And so Milwaukee hits 3 free throws. So now we're tied. And Milwaukee's lost game 1, and they're down 6 with under 30 seconds to go. And now all of a sudden, it's tied with 7.7 to play. Then Jimmy Butler's got the ball, final possession. We all knew Jimmy Butler was going to have it. Milwaukee knew he was going to have it, and that's why they put the Greek Freak on him. Said, hey, we're going to make this as tough on you as possible. He just won Defensive Player of the Year.
To which Jimmy Butler, when asked about Giannis guarding him, said he's a good off-ball defender. I'm just here to tell you, you may not like basketball. You may not like the NBA. But can you do me just this much of a favor and pay attention to Jimmy Butler? Because, David, you described me to the last place we worked at when I was hired.
Right.
Do you remember how you described me?
15 and a half years ago, Mark Miller was about 6 weeks removed from having been let go by the Everblades. And our old employers decide they're going to bring him on because, well, the one thing we know Mark can do is Mark can sell. I mean, he sold about $10 million worth of stuff over there. And, we got a 10,000 watt AM that could use a few commercials. So they decide we're bringing him over. And he's not yet in the building. All right. And the sales manager says, David, you know him best of all of us in this room. How would you describe Mark? And I stood up at the sales meeting and said, Mark is an a-hole. And I sat back down. And then I stood back up when everybody was laughing and I said, but he's a really good one. I go, and I love the guy, and this is a great hire. Okay. And everyone's still laughing. And I go, but just so you know, this is how he rolls.
And that's Jimmy Butler. And you know what? If you don't like it, then get out of the damn way. Because that guy can flat out play.
Yeah. He's a baller.
He is an a-hole. And he's the kind of a-hole you want on your team. Hockey guy, I hate Claude Lemieux because I'm a Detroit Red Wing fan, unless Claude Lemieux played on my team. Basketball guy from days gone by, you all hated Bill Laimbeer. I didn't. He played for my Pistons. Jimmy Butler is that guy. He is a no good blankety blank, and you want him on your team.
And I could argue Jimmy
play for Miami. He should play for Milwaukee. I mean, the fact that Philly, he's perfect for Philly.
Well,
how did Philly let him go?
Well,
that guy is a 76er, for Christ's sake.
Did you see the tweet from Joel Embiid after Butler's 40-point performance in game 1?
Yeah.
And Embiid just sends out a tweet basically like, what if ... And he darn near put a crying face on it. I mean, that's, Embiid watching from afar going, man, if we still had Jimmy Butler.
But he gets the call last night. They send him to the line, and it's a terrible call.
I don't like the call at all.
I don't like either of them, for the record. Neither were good calls.
No, I don't like either call. I hated the last one, which amazingly takes place with no time left on the clock, right? I mean, the foul happens a split second before triple zeros and the red light goes on. And so that's why, they had to take a look to see whether or not the foul was committed with time left in the game. And by the slimmest of margins, they ruled that it was. And once that happened, all Butler had to do was hit one of 2 free throws. And he got the first one to kind of go, and after that, it didn't matter. He hit the second one just for you-know-what and giggles, and the Heat are up 2-0. The top 2
has a better shot.
Right.
Feel free to answer that question on the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing Talk and Text line. It will not be our text. It will not be our poll question today because we're not an NBA market.
No, because we want people to actually respond to the question, so that's why we won't ask it.
We are on the verge, David, of becoming a slight NBA market because when the Heat make a run, people get on board. If the Heat were to dispose of the Bucks, we would start getting a few more NBA fans simply because of the Miami effect.
Well, and I will say this also for our little neck of the woods. What else do we have here? We have a lot of New Englanders because of the Red Sox. And so now you've got the Celtics and the Heat, which would bring back memories of 7, 8 years ago and what was a pretty nasty little rivalry in the early 2010s there with the big three in Boston and obviously the three that were put together in Miami. And they played a couple of epic playoff series. But Boston and the Heat, the 3 and the 5 seeds, are up 2-0 on the top 2 seeds in the East. But a lot of controversy last night. Mark, I'll say this. To me, it's as controversial of a call. Like, we've had games in which we just said, wow, this was horribly officiated. There was that game 6 in the Western Finals almost 20 years ago now between the Lakers and the Sacramento Kings, in which it was so bad that people literally were publicly saying, boy, it was as if the fix was in to get the Lakers to a game 7. The officiating was that bad. I thought that the Dallas-Miami, the first time they played in the finals in 2006, I thought the officiating against the Mavericks was awful. I thought the Heat got every call imaginable. I thought the Heat were playing in Cameron Indoor every game. Honestly, if Dwayne Wade crossed midcourt, they called a foul on the Mavericks. When I watched that series, I thought, boy, they are making sure Mark Cuban does not win a ring. That's, and Heat fans may get upset about that, but as somebody who had no rooting interest in the series, and if anything, I had I like Riley. Even though he left my team, I like Pat Riley. Shaq, Wade, so I was actually kind of rooting for the Heat, but I thought they got every call. There have been series in which we have talked about the officiating, but for a specific call, it's as big a call as has been made in the NBA playoffs in 30 years.
And the fact that they made 2 critically important calls in the final 7.7 seconds of a game, as David mentioned, the final call puts Jimmy Butler on the line with no time on the clock, giving Miami the game. I mean, at that point in the NBA, when you throw Jimmy Butler at the line and say, here's 2, make 1, the game's over, the game's over.
Right.
This isn't a high school kid going to the line.
And most of us, if you were watching it live or if you were to, see replays this morning, I mean, if you had to call 2 fouls or call no fouls on those last 2 plays, though, if those were your options, we're not going to let you split it. It's either all or nothing. I would easily side with nothing. I mean, I hated both calls. I couldn't believe the last one. I mean, at one point, the announcer even said, where's the foul? Butler releases the ball, is on his way down, and as his feet land, there's contact with, come on. That does not,
there's an official, David, 3 feet away from where Butler is that does not make the call. The call came from the back official.
That's the Scottie Pippen foul call on Hubert Davis back in the 94 playoffs, a phantom call. I'm a Knicks fan. The Bulls got totally hosed in that. The one time the Knicks got by Chicago, they shouldn't have. They should have lost that series. The Knicks were given 2 free throws at the end of a game down 1. They made them both. They won the game. They ended up winning the series in 7. It was a phantom call as far as most people are concerned.
To tell you how bad I thought the call was, I texted David at 9:37 p.m. last night. That doesn't happen. With simply the text, did you see that? Wow.
And I figured you were talking about hockey.
No.
And that's why I said no. But, ironically, Mark, you're a Pistons fan. And, there are many that believe that, the Lakers and Pistons played in back-to-back finals. So the first one in 88, the Lakers won in 7. The second one, the Pistons swept them. But in the 88 final, in game 6, I believe it was, Detroit's up 1 late. And the Lakers go to Kareem in the closing seconds. And Kareem, dribbles into the lane and releases his skyhook, misses it, and a late whistle is called and a foul on Lambeer. And to this day, I ask all of you to find the foul. I mean, because first of all,
That hurts a little bit. I haven't
Well,
thought of that in 30 years.
but that's one of those, and that's another reason why last night's call was so surprising. I mean, this is the reigning MVP in the league, also who got called for the foul. I know Jimmy Butler's an all-star caliber player. Greek Freak's a star. I mean, they called that foul on a star player at the end of a tie playoff game. I mean, everything about that call is difficult to believe. And it's not often you could say that a call determined the outcome of a game,
and perhaps a series.
Perhaps.
The difference of 2-0 and 1-1, we all know, is monumental.
Now, I will say this, and if you're Milwaukee, you need to quickly remind yourself of this. We jumped out to a 2-0 lead on Toronto in the conference finals last year, and they won the next 4 games. Now, granted, they had to play 3 of those 4 in Toronto, but if you're Milwaukee, you look at one another and go, listen, it's not like we're going on the road to Miami here, okay, down 2-0. I mean, yeah, we got hosed, this, that, and the other thing. But you know what? Hey, somebody did it to us last year. It's time for us to return the favor.
But you could argue with that controversial call in a great night of basketball for the Miami Heat. It was the second most important story in the state of Florida because let's face it, football's king. And normally, when a guy takes a car ride, or as David would say, a leisurely drive from Jacksonville to Tampa,
3 hours.
That, David.
Yep.
It's a leisurely drive.
It's 3 hours. There's 2 ways to go, Mark. You could go, if you just want to go interstate, you could go I-10 west and just take 75 south, or you could take the scenic route. You go about 20 miles west on I-10, and then you just start to go through horse country. And it's beautiful, Mark. I've done it many times. And you could decide to, get off in Gainesville and pick up the highway there. You could go all the way to Ocala, okay, and then go there. I personally would go to Ocala. Take it a little bit further because when you decide to finally break off, there's a whole bunch of restaurants between you and the highway. So you could just pick a place to eat. But it's beautiful.
You're talking 301 is what you're
absolutely
talking. You're
beautiful.
And I'm with you, Dave. I'm a 301 guy.
Totally.
No reason why I want to get on I-4 and deal with what has been 15 years of construction in and around the city of Orlando. I mean, it is a mess. And even though he's durable and probably can take that type of beating, why would you want him to? Because sure. We got really excited when number 12 came to Tampa.
Sure.
And even more excited when he brought this Gronk guy with him.
Right.
But yesterday, the 4th overall pick from the draft just a few years ago,
3
released by the Jacksonville Jack. Released.
Right. Done. We have no use for this guy. None.
76 catches, 4.3 a carry on the ground, and he's a buck.
Right.
Leonard Fournette signed with the Bucks yesterday for 1 year for not a lot of money, just like we talked about.
No.
Pennies on the dollar, you would argue.
I mean, the most money he's going to make this year is $3.5 million. That's the most he's going to make out of this deal. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Tampa's loading up. I don't know if it's all going to fit. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but they're just bringing in a whole bunch of guys. We could use you. We already have 2 tight ends. That's okay.
We'll take 3.
Wow, we drafted 2. Hold on. We drafted 2 running backs. We signed LaShawn McCoy. We've got Ronald Jones, who's a second-round pick from a couple years ago. We already have too many running backs. Leonard Fournette, bring his ass in here.
Isn't there party right now that Clowney is just going, should I call Tampa and see if they want me?
Yeah. What the heck?
I mean,
what the heck? I mean, they play in the stadium. Isn't that the stadium where Clowney hit the ball carrier and the helmet went
Michigan,
flying?
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Wasn't that the Outback Bowl?
Michigan?
Right. I mean, arguably his football highlight was in that stadium.
His signature play.
Right. Boom. Sure. Let's do it. Man, Bargain Hunters. I mean, that's a TV show. You know who that is right now? That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are bargain hunting. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but man, they're bringing in talent.
I-4 South last night, a lot happening in the sports world, and all happening in a positive manner for Florida teams. The Heat up 2-0. The Bucks pick up another player, winning the Pat Kerwin argument because they haven't won a game yet. But if you're a Bucks fan, you have more hope right now than you have had in a hell of a long time. Since they have won, David, since they've won the Super Bowl, have you had this much hope as a Buck fan?
No, Mark, I'll say it again. Going all the way back to, listen, there's two things that Miller and Moulton have got right over the years. Mark Miller said at least a year before it happened that LeBron was going to Miami. All right. And I said Brady was going to the Bucks. And you know why it was so hard to believe that Brady was going to the Bucks? Because since they came into existence, they are the single losingest franchise in all of pro sports. 125 professional sports teams in the four major leagues. The worst of the bunch is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Even with a championship on their resume, their winning percentage is the worst of all the pro sports teams since 1976. And has been pointed out in our Twitch chat room, Mark, since things happen in threes, Miami up 2-0 on Milwaukee, the Bucks get Leonard Fournette, and the Tampa Bay Rays took the Yankees out back in the Bronx and said, here, let's slap you around a little bit more.
I don't know about you, but when the Rays go up 4 spit in the first and Seth said, it'll be a clean game, I went, well, will it? And it was. But when you get that 4 spit lead early, you go, this could be interesting.
We had 3 suspensions before the game and an ejection during the game. And we had a 4-run top of the first for the Rays in which they basically said, yeah, this night's over.
26-12 are your Tampa Bay Rays. 4.5 clear of the mighty Yankees.
Right.
Tampa, Florida, the sports capital
of the world.
Bucks, Rays, Lightning. How you like me now?
Right. A ratings bonanza when Tampa Bay is the number one sports market in the country. The Central Arkansas Austin P game may outrate the Stanley Cup Finals between Tampa Bay and Las Vegas in a couple of weeks, but that's all right.
Not in this market, it won't.
Nope. It'll be great hockey, too. Miller and Moulton. Starting 5 is coming up. A sad note in the sports world last night. We'll have it all for you next. Thanks for waking up with us this first Thursday of September, a week away from the NFL season kicking off. We are Miller and Moulton on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
We do this all for you.
You are correct.
So sit back and enjoy.
It's fun. It's the best.
I don't know if I've seen its worst ending of a sporting event in my life. It was just gross.
I would not think about ripping
What are you talking about?
Enjoy all of this.
Love it. Embrace it. Isn't it great? And let's not forget.
We're doing it all for you.
You just watch. We're going to do it.
Just gross.
We're Fox Sports Radio. Whether you stop by a local owns now,
Oh, boy.
Yep, you got that right.
if you need help with your ride, you can count
Let's put a little Wink TV on. Let's see what's going on in the Wink world.
It needs qualified AC install technicians now.
Don't sweat. Call Brett.
Don't sweat. Call Brett, everybody.
Yep.
The best of the best that Brett Air Conditioning wants to talk about. Maybe you're not in the business, but please tell them about this great opportunity.
The Rays
Great bet
went 8-2 against the Yankees this year.
on bonus.
8-2.
So if
That's
you
a
feel
bitch
you're
slapping
best,
right there, David.
Yes, it is. Or, as somebody
hold an EV
once famously said, the Yankees just need to call the Rays their daddy.
and pass a drug test. Don't sweat. Call Brett.
And think about it. If you're the Yankees, you're 4.5 back. You don't play them anymore.
239.
And you know how hard it's going to be to win the East? Now you're done with this team.
Okay, who plays 7? How does this playoff work?
License number
1 against 8, 2-7, 3-6,
Okay.
4-5. All best of threes. The top 4 teams
And then we
have.
reseed?
home field. Then they reseed.
But only at Naples Nissan. Yes, bring us that 6, 7, 8-year-old car you're driving now, and we'll pay you what you paid for it, so you can drive home in a brand new Nissan. So, yeah, whatever it was worth back in 2012, that's exactly what it'll be worth now. But only at Naples Nissan.
How about this? Guy texted at 9:43 last night. Florida team with best chance to win championship.
Nice.
Lightning, Rays, Bucks.
Love it. Poll question.
That's done.
Done. Done. Once again, if a name in a city, we could have given you credit, but that's okay.
Hang on.
Dan Patrick Show at work.
Never boring, that's for sure.
It's been texting for years, so I might have a name here. He sends a lot of poll questions. He'll be really happy because this last one I laughed at him. Easy, Spitz. Easy with your magic number is 20. Slow your roll over there.
Oh, come on now. If you're a Rays fan, you're in the AL East, baby. Going up against.
If you're a Red Sox fan, you're rooting for the Rays right now. Because you know the Boston fan is quietly adopting the Florida Boston fan is quietly adopting the Bucks.
Well, I wouldn't throw out the regular season for this sense, though. In theory, like if you're the Rays, you're going to finish. Let's just say you know the 1 or the 2 seed. Well, look at who you could play. I mean, you could face a Toronto or the third place team. You know, I mean, ironically, you could get Houston in a best of 3. You could get Bear, but if you're the 1 seed, you're probably going to get Toronto. Oh, that's a big advantage.
Guy from Dayton texted us last night. For what it's worth, he says, per a source. I love callers that have sources, for the record. Big Ten is back October 10th. 10-game schedule. Teams not participating. Rutgers, Northwestern, Illinois, and Maryland. Minnesota is undecided at this point.
You're live.
$29 minutes past the hour. Top of the morning to you. How the heck are you? We are Miller and Moulton. This is Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, broadcasting live on, 3 FMs, 2 AMs, and an HD2 channel. We're streaming at millerandmoulton.com, and we're broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels. Please sign up for them. They are free. They help us out. You can even get a subscription on Twitch. 479-5551 is how you can chime into the show via the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text and talk line. 239-479-5551. Time now for
The starting 5 big stories that you need to know. This is Miller and Moulton starting 5. Fox Sports Radio and FoxSportsFM.com.
Leonard Fournette is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. The former Jaguar, 25-year-old tailback, signed a 1-year deal, incentive-laden. He can earn up to $3.5 million. He joins a crowded backfield with LaShawn McCoy, Ronald Jones, and a couple of draft picks. But Leonard Fournette is taking his talents to Tampa Bay. In other NFL news yesterday, Washington named Dwayne Haskins their starter. I know Pat is big on, possibly going with Alex Smith, but to me, if you're Washington, quite frankly, the purpose of the 2020 season is to find out if Dwayne Haskins is your franchise quarterback.
No arguments for me on that one, David. I do find the one thing about the Fournette, because Washington was the odds-on favorite in Vegas.
Right.
And I never for a moment bought that. Now, I thought Tampa was a fit, but I did just since you brought up the teams, I never thought if you're Leonard Fournette, going to Washington's a disaster. I want to go play for a team that's going to lose, where I'm going to get beat up. How does that help me make money down the road? I never understood why that even was brought up. How did that even? Do you think that even entered into the equation for him?
It could have for a minute because, quite frankly, that's where he would have gotten the most carries, I believe. And in theory, he would have put up the best numbers. And Ron Rivera would have had a grounded pound type attack. I mean, Fournette would have done well there, I think. But he wouldn't have played in a winning situation. And if your intent is to only go someplace for a year and money is not the issue, Leonard Fournette wanted to win. And think about Leonard Fournette in Tampa. He faced, by the way, the most what they call stacked boxes of any starting running back in the NFL last year. How many times do you think he's going to face a stacked box in Tampa with Tom Brady, those tight ends, and those wide receivers?
And just think about those tight ends. And think about Gronk telling the other two, telling Howard and Brait, saying, we won a Super Bowl by me putting my ass in a 3-point stance and blowing a linebacker out. And this guy's better than anything I had behind me when I was in New England. Hey, don't know how the line's going to hold up. Still the biggest question mark to me, but you want to talk about interesting and fun. They are lined up for us right now, David.
How about this little week 1 matchup? Tampa Bay's in New Orleans. First off, it's going to be incredibly surreal. There's going to be no fans in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, number one. Number two, Jameis Winston's going to be on the New Orleans sidelines. And the pride of New Orleans, Leonard Fournette, is going to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Tom Brady's actually quarterbacking the Tampa Bay Bucs. That's going to look strange enough when we see him run out onto the field for the first time in their uniform. LA Chargers also announced their starting quarterback yesterday. To no one's surprise, it is Tyrod Taylor. The Bears have still not named their quarterback. My guess is they're going to do it soon, I would hope. Season starts for them in 10 days. Alvin Kamara returned to practice yesterday for the Saints, and the two sides reportedly are pretty close on working out a deal. One other football note in the college ranks, the Georgia starting quarterback opted out yesterday. Remember the Wake Forest transfer and all that was made of Jamie Newman? Well, Jamie Newman's not going to play it down for the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, here's what I'm just going to throw out there because I'm a cynic. I'm wondering, did Jamie Newman opt out before he was beaten out?
There's never been a doubt in my mind because Newman transferred from Wake Forest. He was the guy. Georgia landed what at that time was arguably the number one transfer quarterback on the market. Is that fair to say, David?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then what happened at Georgia?
Well, then JT Daniels, a couple months later, announced he was leaving USC. He went to Georgia, and of course, the NCAA immediately declared him eligible.
Right.
Why?
He's a quarterback.
Yeah, he's a quarterback. That's basically it.
You have to be made immediately eligible.
Correct.
Any other position, it's crapshoot.
Right.
But at quarterback, you can claim any reason whatsoever. You could claim a hangnail on your pinky toe, and they would give you eligibility. They might even give you an extra year for that.
You could not even give a reason, actually. You could just be JT Daniels. No, I'm a California kid, and I left here because I'm not getting any playing time. I want to go to Georgia because they're not going to have a quarterback in a year. And they said, well, we'll make you immediately eligible now anyway. So JT Daniels is going to start for the Georgia Bulldogs. Iowa State did change their tune. It was announced just a couple days ago. I think it was on Monday. Iowa State said we're going to have 25,000 fans in our games. Yeah, now they're going to have none. That was a pretty. Now, I will say this. If you're a Big Ten football fan, I know Iowa State's in the Big 12, but since they are in Big Ten country, see, that's what Kevin Warren and the Big Ten could do. See, it was only 72 hours ago that they announced they were going to have 25,000 fans. And 3 days later, what do? They announced we're going to have no fans. See, you can announce we're not going to play and turn around and announce you're going to play. You can change your mind in college athletics. It's allowed.
I actually thought that Iowa State going from 25,000 to 0 was a bad day for the Big Ten, David. Because it was more startling the fact that Iowa and Ohio are playing high school football They have college teams playing there, and one of the college teams is going to have a bunch of fans. I really thought Iowa State with 25,000 was good for the Big Ten, David.
You're probably right. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to be glass half full.
And you are, and your theory is completely correct because you're using, David, logic, common sense, and the ability to admit you were wrong.
See, I thought I was using sarcasm actually and a lot of snark, but I'm glad
David,
got my back.
When you use sarcasm and snark, it's just good old fashioned common sense to me. I read right through that where I don't look at it negatively. I just look at it as common sense.
Once again, going back to the story that we told during the first segment about introducing Mark to the staff at our former employer. Tom Seaver passed away. It turned out he died in his sleep Monday, and the family did not release the news to the Baseball Hall of Fame until late yesterday afternoon. Tom Seaver was 75 years old. The numbers are staggering. They were staggering when he pitched. They're even more impressive today. To have a 300-game winner with an ERA of under 3. And he was a power pitcher. Mark, one of the reasons why I always lobbied for Burt Blyleven to get into the Hall of Fame, Tom Seaver had 61 shutouts. And there are many that consider Tom Seaver to be the best right-handed pitcher post-World War II. Seaver had 61. Blyleven had 60. It was one of the big things that I always said, this is a Hall of Famer here. Seaver with 3,600 plus strikeouts, 3 Cy Youngs, a no-hitter with the Reds in 78, was the ace of the 69 Mets staff that won the World Series, was a 12-time All-Star. Mark, he was, I think every sports fan has their first athlete that was their first guy or gal, their first athlete that they took to. Tom Seaver was it for me growing up in North Jersey. My fandom was what it was, Giants, Knicks, Rangers, Mets. And at that time, 73, 74, Seaver ended up being the guy. The Giants weren't good. The Mets, when I first started rooting for them, were still pretty good. Rangers were beginning to go down. The Knicks, I missed out on the Knicks, to be honest with you, and those guys. Seaver was my guy. My first sports guy, and was lucky enough to cover his Hall of Fame induction in 1992. Mr. Met, Tom Terrific, passed away at the age of 75. Before the Yankees and the Rays played, Kevin Cash and Aaron Boone, the respective managers, were both suspended for last night's game. Aroldis Chapman, the Yankees closer, got a 3-game suspension for throwing behind the head of Rays second baseman Mike Brousseau. So Mike Brousseau, when he came up in the first inning last night, hit a bomb for a 2-run homer and has been pointed out in our Twitch chat room and Cadillac it. And then hit another later in the game just for you-know-what and giggles. 5-2 Rays over the Yankees. Their season series is over, folks. Tampa Bay won it 8-2. Rays with a 4.5-game lead in the East. Toronto beat the Marlins 2-1. Phillies 3-0 over the Nats. Braves keep pace with a 7-5 win over the Red Sox. So the Marlins now still in the playoffs, but now third in the NL East. The Indians shut out KC 5-0, combined with Minnesota beating the White Sox 8-1. That puts the Indians in first by a game over the White Sox and a game and a half over the Twins. Burt Blyleven announced his retirement either right before the game or early during the broadcast last night. He's been broadcasting Twins games for 25 years. And Burt, over 25 years, Burt Blyleven, who wasn't doing many games anymore, but along with Dick Bremer, a beloved broadcasting figure in the upper Midwest, Burt Blyleven, who calls Fort Myers home.
And now will be
special assistant
for the Twins or special assistant, and Fort Myers is now full-time home.
Yep. Twins a winner in Blyleven's last broadcast, 8-1. Padres keep rolling, 11-4 over the Angels. Dodgers keep rolling, 3-2-10 over Arizona. Astros 2-1 over Texas. Milwaukee 8-5 over Detroit. Cubs 8-2 winners over Pittsburgh, but the Cardinals a loser, so the Cubs add to their lead in the Central. 4-3 Reds a winner. Colorado 9-6 over the Giants, and the Mets, ironically, on the day it was announced of Tom Seaver's passing, the Mets beat the Orioles in the '69 World Series, and the Mets beat the Orioles yesterday 9-4. We mentioned the NBA and the dramatics. The Heat winning game 2, controversial fashion, 2 free throws with no time left, 116-114. Oh, by the way, there was a game 7 played in the NBA last night. It was a really good one. 104-102, Houston gets by OKC, so the Rockets will face the Clippers. It'll be Denver and the Lakers and the Rockets and the Clippers. NHL, Colorado forces a game 7 with a very. How about our Avs?
David?
You asked the question, all the teams that were down 3-1, which one had the best shot to come back? And we both said Colorado. They have forced a game 7 with a third string goalie. They've won the last 2 games. Gritty effort last night, 4-1 win over Dallas.
This is the case of a younger team versus an older team. Dallas has tried to beat Colorado by pushing them around a little bit.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that they're tougher or stronger, but they're older and they're smarter and tougher. And they've just been kind of giving it to Colorado and knowing when they can punch them in the back of the head and get away with it. And it looked like Colorado in game 5 said, enough.
Yep.
And they just outskated them and buried them. And then last night, they beat them in a gritty game. Should be a terrific game 7.
Yeah, they beat the Dallas Stars at the Dallas Stars game last night and won 4-1. All right. Now, neither one of these teams is going to beat Vegas because neither one of these teams right now has good goaltending, and Vegas has great goaltending. So Vegas is going to face Tampa Bay in the finals. Okay, but this would be a big win for Colorado if they could come back from 3-1.
It might save our friend's job.
It might save Bednar's job, and it also will show, quite frankly, that they've got what it takes to actually get the job done. They just need to go get a goalie.
And they had one. He got hurt.
Yeah, they had 2, actually. They both got hurt.
Their first-string goalie and their best defensemen are out right now. They're doing this without 2 key players.
U.S. Open tennis, Djokovic lost the first set, but then won in 4. Top seed on the women's side was upset yesterday. Pliskova's out. Hey, if you're a Serena Williams fan hoping for number 24 like I am, Serena's the 3rd seed. You want to see the top seed bounced. And at 16 minutes before the hour mark, that is a very detailed.
The starting 5. 5 big stories that you need to know. This is Miller and Moulton's starting 5. Fox Sports Radio and FoxSportsFM.com.
A reminder, David, the starting 5 brought to you by the Florida Sea Dragon, Southwest Florida's first pro basketball team to fail.
But not the only one.
Correct.
And they will likely be a sponsor post-Labor Day. Miller and Moulton. Seaver was a tough one for me last night.
I when I heard that, I knew that.
That was tough for me. That was
I'm
tough.
a Tom Seaver fan. And Seaver being of the age that when he played a little bit, his best was maybe a little bit before I really got into it. I knew that he was one of your guys, and that one would hit you right between the eyes. One of our texters hit us right between the eyes this morning. He came up with the poll question.
Huh.
No idea what name he goes by or what
right.
from.
Right.
You know, I'm going to say Hank from Hattiesburg came up with that one, David.
Stop it.
We'll have yesterday's poll question answer in today's poll question brought to you by a listener on the Wilson Brothers Marine and Roofing Talk and Text line.
God forbid.
One of many ways.
You give us your name and where you're from. God forbid we can thank Joe in the Cape for the poll question. No, that's okay. No, it's fine, really.
Look at this is, David keeps saying why you want to be on Twitch to see the things I'm doing. No. The disdain that he gets right there. He has quit the show for 30 seconds. He is just knocking down a Gatorade Zero. He's done with me. He's done with you. He's done with all of us. If you know his personal phone number, if you're a friend of David's, text him right now.
No.
Give him a fake name.
Leave me alone.
Miller and Moulton. Or is it? Fox Sports Radio streaming at millerandmoulton.com, and you are looking live at twitch.tv.
Welcome to the program.
This is the Dan Patrick Show.
Chuck.
God forbid we can thank someone with a name. No, we just have to refer to you as Texter.
Martin, one-on-one is the best offensive player he's ever seen. Would I say he's the greatest offensive one-on-one player? No, because Kareem is the
guy
greatest
just asked us, do you like the
offensive
new general manager
he's
for the
ever
Florida
seen.
Panthers?
Nobody could stop this guy.
Who's the new general manager for the Florida Panthers?
Was a guy from the Blue Jackets organization.
Okay. I love him then.
I think he was like the player personnel guy for the Blue Jackets.
Dan Martin,
You know.
owner of DR
Listen, the Blue Jackets organization has done a really good job of drafting players. So
free inspection. Google DRM Roofing or call.
listen, Florida's had a lot of talent over the last 10 years. They just haven't had the right kind of talent.
6954.
By the way, Colorado needs to do what the Lightning did and get a Pat Maroon. That's the guy they're missing. Veteran with grit, David.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonathan France. See your
Well,
in 2020.
they need another defenseman.
Vision can
All right, they do.
enjoy day-to-day
They need one more defenseman.
advantage of the pen.
I don't think their goaltending is good enough to win a cup, even when healthy. But
is now possible.
then again, I'm not sure who you can go out and get who's better than what you have.
Designed to be used
But
to help people get 2020 distance. Near
but you're right, Mark.
between.
You're right. They have more than enough skill.
Right. They
They
just need a little grit.
They need a second line defenseman, and
a
they need
third line center or a winger, if you know what I mean.
yeah, and they need two more gritty forwards. But
By
you can get that at the trade deadline.
By the
You know,
way, good day for Bro. I mean, I'm sorry about the Blyleven thing, but a good day in general. Anytime that Bob Greasy's taken out of the booth, that's a good day for all of us.
What?
Greasy's done. The Dolphins hired Jason Taylor to replace Greasy in the radio booth. About damn time. That game passed him by 30 years ago. He was awful.
Wow.
I'm sure he's a wonderful guy, and I know he's a Dolphin legend and all that. He was terrible on the air. And I mean terrible, David.
And new membership pricing starts as low as $99. Call 239-945-1664 for more information or visit towboatuscapecoral.com. With Towboat US, you're never stuck on the water.
Do you like me?
Like Miller and Moulton on Facebook. Just search Miller and Moulton.
You like that?
The new $3 hotcake breakfast sandwich from Hardee's knows just how you like it. Your sausage, sizzling. And your eggs, fluffy. A full breakfast nestled between two sweet hotcakes. At only $3, the new hotcake breakfast sandwich is almost too good to be true. Wake up you're happy with the new hotcake breakfast sandwich. Part of the 2-3 more breakfast menu at Hardee's. Feed you're happy. Offer valid for a limited time during
Oh, hey.
hours at participating Hardee's.
Like I hide a lot. I don't hide very much on air, let alone during these 3 minutes of commercial time. And it's not the first time that I've said Greasy's I think I said Greasy was horrible in Act 1.
But we added spicy jalapenos and melty pepper jack cheese.
David, did you see it?
Now I got Paul in Naples who just sent me a text saying that the texter is Bobby from Buffalo. This is what I need.
Try the new spicy Western bacon cheeseburger at Hardee's.
Miller and Moulton fan asks if you saw a tweet of Seaver's scouting report last night.
I did not. Coming out of USC? No, I did not.
Trend in the air conditioning business with the rip-off companies to become plumbers.
Hey, Spits on Sports, I'm sorry. The Dolphins radio broadcasts are arguably the worst thing in professional broadcasting. In terms of team broadcasts. All right, that is a really tough listen.
It's horrible.
You never know where the ball is. They're just they're like
Cephalo doing play-by-play still. Is that?
Yep, it's
He's
Cephalo.
terrible. You can't. There aren't very many. I mean, Pat Summerall was a modern marvel that you took a former player and made him a play-by-play guy.
Yeah, Gifford the same way.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few that can make that transition, and Cephalo's not one of them.
You know what? An interesting thing about Seaver, they don't do it anymore. Seaver and Theismann, the last two guys I can remember that while still playing were in the broadcast booth doing the playoffs and World Series and Super Bowl and what have you.
This is Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
9 minutes before the top of the hour. Thanks so much for being with us, no matter how you are with us, whether it's on one of the 3 FMs, 2 AMs, or an HD2 channel, that is Fox Sports Radio in Southwest Florida, whether it's streaming via millerandmoulton.com, or whether it is watching and taking it in on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels. And for that matter, I talked to a gentleman yesterday in Tennessee who said that
fired up about the Landry Football Network. That's going to be, David and I both think it'll be a really good thing for this show down the road. David, you received a text during the break that helped us out a little bit, because earlier in the show on the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text line, someone who was giving us different ideas, and they very much want to be a contributor. And I truly love our texters. You've done a great job, and I apologize to those of you that I don't respond to regularly. I try to, and I've noticed sometimes someone goes 6, 8, 10 texts without a response, and that's rude of me. I will try to be a little better. But one of our texters is contributing in ways and trying to give us a poll question. Yeah, he had something a couple weeks ago, and he got a little too cute for his own good. But today, he sent us a text. In fact, he did it last night at 9:43 p.m. after the Heat went up 2-0 on the Bucks. And he simply said, poll question for tomorrow.
Okay.
Which Florida team has the best chance to win a championship? Heat, Lightning, Rays, or Bucks?
Look at that. Look at that. A question that was ridiculous most every day of the last 5 years. Now, hell, they're all championship contenders.
By the way, on this list, for the record, I think the Heat up 2-0 have the worst shot at winning a championship.
I would agree with that.
I don't even know if they get past the Bucks. But that's our poll question. But what the great part about this poll question is not that he gave it to us at 9:43, is that someone during the last break was able to connect with David Moulton and tell us who it was.
Yeah. Right.
You got a text during the break, right?
Yeah.
On your own personal phone.
Yeah. Paul in Naples texted me to tell me that that text that you received, Mark, on the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text line came from Bobby in Buffalo. I promptly told Paul in Naples to give him a hearty hello this morning before 7 a.m. That's right. Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that our listeners
Unbelievable.
do for me on a regular basis, that just when you're bored, if you have David's number, just send him a text with a random name and city.
Unbelievable. I don't get it. I'm trying to acknowledge everybody. Hey, thank you for listening. You know, Joe in the Cape, or Bill in Naples, or whatever the case may be. Frank in Lehigh, Jameel in Lehigh, you know, whatever. No, apparently you all want to remain incognito. All right. You don't want the recognition. Instead, you'd rather keep jerking my bobber. That's the theme of 2020. Jerking my bobber.
Jerking Moulton's bobber today. And I appreciate the fact that all of you have taken it upon yourselves to occasionally jerk David's bobber.
Right.
But little other sports news out there. David had a great starting five, a lot of depth, a lot of things to go through.
Right.
You mentioned the passing of Tom Seaver, which is just awful. And David brought up Burt Blyleven for some similar statistical with the shutouts, and Burt Blyleven retired yesterday from broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Another broadcaster was let go yesterday. And I think it's a great move for the team, and I'm probably going to piss some people off saying it. But Bob Greasy essentially got fired yesterday by the Dolphins. And all I can tell you is it's about damn time. I get it. He's your guy. He's your hero. Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. But the game had passed him by. If you listened, it is one of the worst listens in sports. And it's got to get better because Jason Taylor's now in the booth instead of Bob Greasy.
All right.
I don't know if it's going to be good yet because it's a long way to take this broadcast from horrible to good, but it got better yesterday.
I would agree with that. Also, it got a little more current. just a little more current. Right. That, the Dolphins, I feel badly in this sense. It would have been nice to be able to have Bob in a public forum say goodbye. And with no preseason games, because Bob has also been a part of the Dolphins preseason broadcast, with no preseason games this year, there was no way for publicly Bob to, after the final preseason game, essentially say, hey, been calling Dolphins games in some capacity for a long time. This is it for me.
1 minute.
But Bob's 75 years old.
He is.
And the game of football has so drastically changed from when he was a quarterback to now that, and I don't know, I mean, it's obvious you can learn it. And it's not that he didn't know football, but he had trouble explaining the current game to people. I've always thought he was a very difficult listen.
And we wondered, we've said this publicly before, we wondered when the Dolphins were going to bring in the, Jimmy Johnson era players, whether it was Zach Thomas or Jason Taylor or just somebody in the last 25 years, when they were going to bring them into the fold. Instead, everything from a broadcasting standpoint with the Dolphins is still very much from the Shula days. And Greasy, obviously, from the early Shula days. Miller and Moulton. Thanks for listening. It's that time again to hear from our good friend, Dave Meister, owner of the Floor Meisters in Naples. And we love talking to Dave. We know that when he calls, something special's going on at Floor Meisters. Dave, sounds like you have a lot of that very popular got a fast today wants in their home.
Yes,
got a big scan tomorrow.
Got about 6 or 7.
Tells me whether or not I have cancer or not. So I got midday today. I got to start fasting.
Freeze of the prices on all our
nothing but water for about 24 hours in a couple hours.
Square foot, and we're going to save it for our customers.
So when it comes to Cortec, it's amazing the selection that you'll find at Floor. My insurance company has not allowed me already to be installed. My doctor
we
has wanted to take this scan many times over the last 4 months, and my insurance company would not allow them.
Boulevard, right next to Costco.
Reportedly, they're now finally going to allow it and pay for it because I can't afford to pay for the $9,000 scan myself.
Exciting 2 minutes in sports.
Nick, I am tempted to hit a fast food place after this scan. Nick, what I think I'll do is because I'll get the scan results next week from today, actually. Thanks, Spitz. That if the news is bad, I will eat hard
a lot has changed
next week.
That's why
I will just
when our new
be like, you know what?
More
blanket.
Stories. More
and hit a drive-through and
more. Like
order a number 3 with a double cheeseburger along the side. I may go that route next week. But so far, so good.
More coming soon to Wink TV.
Feel good. Down a bunch of pounds.
With balls.
I don't know if I look it, but
WFSX AM from Naples to Cape Coral.
Down about 50, 55 pounds. Yeah, Spitz, the insurance it is so corrupt.
C4MH.com.
I mean, the fact that they just say no to everything. I don't believe they should have the right to say no, honestly. They're for profit. I don't believe they should have the right to say no. I think they should have the right to charge whatever it is they want to charge. But I don't think insurance companies should have the right to say no. Doctors should be the ones administering medical care. Insurance companies should be the ones paying for it through us. The fact that they are the ones determining healthcare in this country, I don't know why we can't correct it, to be honest with you. At some point in time, late 80s, early 90s, we went from doctors to insurance companies. And I don't know why we can't take it back. You would think it'd be a pretty popular thing to run on, right, Mark?
Yeah.
I mean, we know why, because the insurance companies are paying off Washington, but you would think it'd be a pretty popular thing to run on. Either party. A new party.
There's only one way
anything
to wake up in the morning.
the heck are you?
Yep, that's it.
I must admit, to get off David's insurance thing, to get us back to sports, maybe cheer him up a little bit. Casio puts together this terrific show. Probably the earliest text we've gotten of a complete show in a long time. And I literally respond with, "Do you see Fournette just signed with the Bucks?" I think I broke his heart with that text.
Yep.
He is mixing and matching sets of golf.
I will say the guy that grabbed Fournette in the 6th round did a hell of a job. An unsigned Fournette goes in round 6.
Broadcasting live from the Kobe Cooling Remote Studios, where it's always cool and comfortable.
Oh, I like it. It's up to you now. It's up to you. I like it.
Now, the best local sports show this town has ever heard. Here's Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
Couple minutes past the hour. Top of the morning to you. How the heck are you? We're Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels beginning next week, day after Labor Day. We are off Monday, for the record. We're taking the holiday because, we're not going to have another day off till Thanksgiving. So, might as well take it, right? So we're going to take Monday off, and we'll come back on Tuesday the 8th. And when we do, the bonus hour will begin from 9 to 10 exclusively on Twitch.tv.
It looks as if, at least for the next little while, I'm going to be afraid to take commercial breaks off, because there was a very intense conversation during that last commercial break. David and 3 or 4 of the listeners were breaking down healthcare coverage in the country.
Well, I just let people know you got up and left, and one of us has to entertain during the break.
Right.
And so you got up and left, I'm assuming to get a coffee. And so I just let people know I've got a big scan tomorrow. I'd find out whether or not I still have cancer or not.
Kind of important.
Well, I think so. I mean,
that's a big one.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, that's at least above a 5, right? I mean, that's over the Mendoza line. As
I like to refer to all the time, David, that's Spinal Tap. That one goes to 11.
Well,
that
I mean,
kind of important.
I think it's at least above the belt. I really do. All right. And so I was just letting people know, hey, I'm going to be sucking down, a couple of Gatorade Zeros here because I got to start fasting. Water and protein for 24 hours before my big scan. And then got into the fact that, I haven't been able to have the scan until now because my insurance company has, said no about 17 times to having the scan. And so we got into a discussion about healthcare and health insurance and life in the pursuit of happiness. And as one could expect,
not be a part of that conversation.
No,
there was nothing happy about it.
No, or life and aggravation, actually, is how we call it. So that's why it deteriorated down that road. I will say it is a unifying force in this country. There's not much that unifies us anymore. All right. Sports usually does it, although now
we have no fans, we have nowhere to watch. We don't watch together, if you know what I mean.
But also sports has become socially active. Some are claiming politically active. And so that has led to even not as much agreement even with our sports as we used to have. But if you do want to unify red and blue, okay, black and white, Republicans and Democrats, men and women, dogs and cats. If you want to unify them, talk healthcare. That can get everybody on the same page quicker than just about anything I know. Just a little tip. Okay, now, so if you're, in a social gathering, okay, of course, remaining socially distant, but if you're in a gathering while distant, all right, and you need a unifying topic, I suggest going there. The problem is you have to know when to pivot, because at a certain point in time, then the conversation, somebody's going to take it just off course, just a little too far, and then it's no longer unifying. Nope. So you just need to know, it's kind of like how often do you keep going to the well? The fastball's been working inside. Okay, but eventually it's not going to. You need to know at what point in the lineup during the game do I need to start throwing breaking stuff away. That's all. That's my advice.
I've lived by a very small credo for a long time. And that's it. Never have more than 10 items in your grocery cart when entering the 10 and under.
Well, thank goodness, Mark.
And Guillermo
Thank goodness.
is an attorney who has been following the two of us on Twitter for some time. And based on the fact that he's an attorney, you'd think he'd get most things right. But you're listening. You're not catching everything. And I think he kind of confused the two of us. But he sent us both a text yesterday that made my day. A tweet, rather. Which he said a Publix cashier pulled a David Moulton. And I don't really think he pulled a David Moulton. I think he pulled a Mark Miller. But again, I'm not going to mince here. Called out a customer with more than 10 items. The Publix cashier, which for the record, I have interviewed countless Publix cashiers. It is against their rules for them to do this. They want to do this, but they can't.
Right.
The customer is always right. Or, as I was told, my very first day waiting tables, when you follow another waiter, he looked at me and he says, management will tell you the customer is always right. I will tell you that the customer is always the enemy. And I've always thought that that was a very fair statement. But he picked off all the items off of the conveyor belt and made the guy go to another line. Do you know what I would have done?
I would have given him a standing ovation. Honestly, I would have thrown money at him like I was in a strip club.
Yep.
Honestly. And of course, that's another thing that they're not allowed to do at that grocery store. They're not allowed to accept tips.
Correct.
Okay? Let me tell you something.
You have to take one. I don't care. I'm not leaving until you take my money.
I would have found his car in the parking lot and just had nothing but bills underneath the windshield wipers. Honestly, I don't care. All right. That man or woman is my hero. Telling someone in the 10 items or less line when you bring your 14 items, hey, what part of 10 or less are you having trouble reading? And then, I mean, Mark, there is this thing called the walk of shame. Very rarely do you see it in a grocery store.
No, usually it's that reserved for a college campus on a Saturday morning.
Exactly. Or a Sunday. All right. But the walk of shame of having to go from the far right-hand aisle, pick your stuff up, make everybody back up, and then you have to work your way over and then get back in line somewhere else where they've got 30, 40 items in their cart. Huh. That's a walk of shame. Let me tell you. Wish we had the videotape. We'd be running it right now.
On a loop. On a loop. Our poll question today. I can't believe this is our poll question today, David.
Because it's true. That's what you can't believe. You can't believe this is a relevant poll question.
Which Florida team has the best chance to win a championship? And there are 3 legitimate contenders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on here. Because right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a legitimate contender, as are most every NFL team at this point. I mean, outside of the Redskins, the Giants, the Jags, the Jets, the Browns and the Lions, just because they're the Browns and the Lions. I mean, doesn't everybody else have a legitimate shot right now?
Dolphins, Bengals. Here's a few more that you could throw on the list and go, yeah, I don't. Carolina Panthers. I think you could probably extend the list to 10 plus teams this year in which you go, yeah, you got no shot. This whole worst
really
first
doesn't
thing
deserve to be on that, but
no,
but you put them on just because.
Right. They have a playoff roster. I mean, I'll put the LA Chargers on the list because there's no way you're winning a championship with Tyrod Taylor, quarterback. I'm sorry. That ain't happening. It's just not happening. You can make the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor. You ain't winning a championship with Tyrod Taylor. But 479-5551. 239-479-5551. The Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text and talk line. But our poll question, Rays, Bucks, Lightning, Heat. Which one of these 4 teams is the best shot at a championship? And we mean, obviously, this year.
Well, and I put this current season just to make sure everybody, I mean, I feel like it should be bold, italics, and underlined, but this current season, not like forever, now.
Not in the future. Normally, this poll question would be before 2025.
Right.
Comma.
In the next 10 years.
Right. Comma. All right. No, we mean now.
Now.
Current seasons. Now.
Working for you. The Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, the Heat. The Miami Heat are up 2-0 on the Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
The Lightning are just sitting waiting for this series to end so that they can go play Vegas in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Rays treated the Yankees like they were a junior varsity team.
For the record, as Pedro Martinez once said, all right, the Yankees now have to call the Rays their daddy. Hey, you go 2-8 against them. All right, you go 1-5 against them in the Bronx. I mean, the Rays just took the Yankees to school in the Bronx this year. And of course,
last night they were chirping the way that Cash blamed the Yankees for chirping. The Rays did it from start to finish last night.
Yeah, but they were taunting. But they were taunting the Rays. The Rays. I mean, the Rays are tired of the Rays. Quite frankly, think the Yankees are a bunch of whiners, are complaining about every call, and the Rays said we're just tired of it. We're just tired of their act, is what the Rays have said. But the Rays hit 2 home runs in the two 2-run homers in the first inning last night. It was 4-0. And the Rays let the Yankees know for the next 2.5 hours that they were their daddy. They did. Now, everything can change in the postseason. But it is remarkable. Rays with the best record in the AL right now? Is it
I
the Rays?
So.
I thought they moved slightly. I thought they moved slightly ahead of Oakland again.
They're 4 games up in the win column. They're actually tied in the loss column. They're 4 games up in the win column. So yes, they have the best record.
There you go. That's right. Your Tampa Bay Rays with the best record in the American League. Right now, they'd be the 1 seed. They'd face Toronto if the playoffs started today in a first-round series. And as somebody pointed out, they've already played 10 times this year, and it was, I think, 6-4 was the season series, and the games were tough.
I mean, they're only 2 back of the Dodgers, the Rays.
Right. Well, here's what's interesting about this. Major League Baseball is seriously considering a bubble for the playoffs. Well, if you're Manfred, where are you going to do the bubble? Are you going to try to do it in a place where you're rewarding a good team or teams? Because I would think, don't you have to have an American League bubble place and a National League bubble place? I mean, don't you have to have 2? Don't you have to do like the NHL, Edmonton and Toronto? You got 8 teams. I mean, in theory, that's 4 games in each league. I mean, I could argue you need 2 for each league for the first round, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yes, bubblicious. I'm with you. I for baseball, David, because you're talking series as opposed, I think you probably are right. I would think you would need a minimum of 2 and maybe 4 spots.
Well, here's what I think they're going to do. They're going to allow the first round best of 3 to be, quote unquote, at home. So that then when they put the teams in a bubble, it'll be 4 from each league. And so then in theory, you need 2 games played in the one site, 2 games played in the other, which is exactly what the NHL has done with Edmonton and Toronto. So that's how they're going to get away with just having the 2 sites. But Mark, if you're Major League Baseball, do you reward the 2 1 seeds, if you know what I mean? Do you put the bubble in Los Angeles and St. Pete because the Dodgers and the Rays are the 1 seeds? I mean, honestly, or are you going to do it based on COVID? Are you going to do it based on geography?
Well, you can't do it. You can do it based on COVID. But when you do it based on COVID, then what dome are you playing in? If you're going to say, I'm not going to this state, because you are talking about doing this when the weather's going to start changing in places. So does the bubble mean a dome? So you always ensure yourself of no weather delays.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, I mean,
And I mean, like, I know you're leaning at and saying, what if they did it at the Trop? It's a bad baseball stadium.
well, it is, but should the Rays, if they're the one, have the honor of hosting it? I mean, they earned it. They're the best team in the American League. If we're going to have a bubble, shouldn't the Rays get some sort of advantage for what they've done? At least they know that ballpark really well. And I mean, Mark, it makes sense. It's a dome. It's not like the games are ever going to get postponed. You can schedule them for whatever days and times you want.
Why I think if you're going to do a bubble, you have to put it inside.
And right now, the Dodgers are the best team, and the team with the second best record, I think, San Diego. In the National, maybe it's still the Cubs, but I thought it's the Cubs.
Actually, the Cubs and the Braves have the same record at 22-14. I've got the standings in front of me.
So, but the Padres are better than that, aren't they?
No, they're right there.
Okay,
actually, they're right there, but they're not winning their division. So how these things go.
So right now, if you're Major League Baseball, your two best teams are in Los Angeles and St. Pete. Well, one's got a dome, and the other will likely have really good weather. I mean, yes, it's outdoors, but Mark, I mean, would you roll the dice on playing playoff baseball in mid to late October in Los Angeles?
I'd roll the dice on playing baseball in LA every day of the year. It doesn't seem to ever rain there.
Yeah.
They had these things called fires nonstop.
Yes.
They seem not to get rain.
Right.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. It's not Portland, if you know what I mean.
Right. So that's something that I find interesting. What are they going to do here? And where are they going to hold this bubble? I would think you'd have to seriously consider St. Pete. And yeah, I know Florida's been in the news for COVID and how they've handled it. And some people think they've handled it great. And some people think they've handled it badly. But, this NBA bubble working in Orlando, and the governor being open to any and all sports, I don't think is going to hurt Tampa's cause or St. Pete's cause to host the bubble. I think it's going to help, actually. 479-5551, 239-479-5551. Leonard Fournette, a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, the Georgia starting quarterback, opts out yesterday. My guess is we'll find out in the coming days, was he going to be the starting quarterback? Or had JT Daniels, the USC transfer, passed him? Anthony Dasher, who covers the Bulldogs, will join us in about 10 minutes to talk about the Dogs, who have a schedule this year.
Auburn week 2.
And Alabama week 4 or 5. Week 4.
Auburn, Tennessee, Bama.
There you go.
Back to back to back.
That'll get your attention.
You're darn right it will.
All righty then.
Probably why this gentleman on the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text line says, you could go 5 wide with that poll question. I'll take the Gators. To which I promptly responded, win the East before we put you in championship discussions. Win the East.
Well, also, I think we were just trying to keep it pro, but I applaud your confidence. And I applaud, quite frankly, you saying, hey, time for us to raise our expectations back to what they used to be. It's time to start thinking championship, quite frankly.
I'll tell you what, Gator fan, you already led me to, if this were the Lebertard show, I'd already have a second poll question up, but we don't do that on this show. So tomorrow's poll question will be, which Florida football team will win the most games?
Ooh.
There's Starkey.
Wow.
Noles, Canes, Gators, or Knights?
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
For the record, yesterday's poll question was around the Big Ten, in which we asked, when are they going to play football next?
Right.
The choices were October, November, January through March, some sort of winter spring ball, or August of 2021. August of 2021, one going away.
Wow.
almost a little over 38% of the vote. October was next, and then the other two were around 17%. Dan Patrick, after our show was over, said his source is talking October 10th. They have 2 days, David. If the Big Ten, I know they could wait a little longer, but don't you feel like if they're going to try to make something happen in the 2020 calendar year, that they've got until tomorrow at about 5 to get this decision done?
No, I think they have much more time than that. I really do. First off, Ohio State practiced yesterday in full pads. I don't think it's going to take all that long to get these teams ready, honestly. It get 2-3 weeks of practice, they'd be ready to go. So, do your timeline there, Mark. I think they've got a couple more weeks easily. I really do. Remember, 5 Saturdays in October, 4 in November. They can have their Big Ten title game the 3rd weekend of December, the way the SEC is now. I mean, so that's 11 Saturdays right there to start if you start the first Saturday in October. If you decide you're only going to play like 8 games, obviously that gives you a little bit more time.
I think that's the number, by the way, David. I think 8 is a more realistic number. You are right. You've got, if you go till December 5th consecutively from October, that's 10 weeks. I don't think they're starting October 3rd. I think that's very much wishful thinking.
I agree. But here's what you need to pay attention to. Forget Dan Patrick, any blogger, any media sources. Honestly, there's only one thing that we need to be paying attention to. It was reiterated earlier this week. The university presidents are making this call. There are 11 of them who voted against playing. None of the 11 have changed their minds. We need to find one to publicly at some point say, I think things have changed. I think maybe we should try playing. Once that happens, then I think the Big Ten season is going to happen. But right now, Nebraska, Iowa, and Ohio State's presidents are a yes, and the other 11 are a no. And in fact, the Purdue president doubled down on his no 2 days ago. That's what you need. Forget all of the ADs and coaches who are leaking their opinions to all these members of the media. And it doesn't matter even what comes out of the Big Ten office. There are 11 university presidents who right now are unified in not playing.
In fact,
you need one.
In fact, the one thing that you could draw from this is that the Big Ten football coaches and athletic directors' relationship with the media has never been better. And I'm not joking when I say that. Any trial balloon that any coach or athletic director wants to get out about trying to play football, they have been able to get out in a nanosecond. It is feeding raw meat to the lions right now. Call Angelique Shingalis from the Free Press. Call Tony Girdman from the Ohio paper. They'll take it.
Sure.
And if not, find a blogger, because he'll write 6 stories on it and people will pick it up.
Miller and Moulton. So that was our poll question yesterday. Our poll question today: which team has the best chance to win a championship this year? Bucks, Lightning, Heat, Rays.
Come on, Tampa. We're a sports town. Damn it.
We're the center of the sports universe. Miller and Moulton. The Dogs had their starting quarterback opt out yesterday.
Yeah, whatever.
There's anything.
Quarterback did not opt out. Their backup quarterback opted out.
Well, we'll ask Anthony Dasher which quarterback opted out yesterday. He covers the Dogs, and we'll see whether or not, quite frankly, they're still better than the Gators. Don't know that they are. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
This is The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
Baseball numbers are way up for the boycott.
Going to be a hell of a cocktail party this year.
Players kneeled. And they were
going to be a hell of a cocktail party.
We picked a bad year to boycott. There's a lot of us are stuck at home.
So CBS News,
sports now in America.
Okay.
Looked up, I don't know, beginning of this segment, and one of the early stories on 7 is basically the CDC is telling states to prepare for a November vaccine.
It's Fred Kobe with your Kobe Cooling tip for the day.
Wow.
When you call us at 239-482-1542.
Here's the problem now. The CDC has been politicized. And it never was before. So, I will say there's a vaccine that apparently has entered the final trial stage as of this week. But they don't think they'll be able to go forward to the next stage until around Thanksgiving, in a best case scenario, that they won't get their results back. But that's still November. But
yeah, no, I mean, just that, and it's, and by the way, that means it's because I did that. It's time to go to Good Morning Football because I started watching the news. It's done. And Foot Fan, I'm not trying to be mean here. But this is the SEC fan bitching that we're not talking about the SEC right now. There's no stories in the SEC. There are in the Big Ten. The only story at UCF is 10 of your guys opted out. Well, USF has been in the headlines. I mean, so what?
Also,
the series makes all kinds of sense. We're talking about USF.
Also, Foot Fan, hey, South Florida doesn't have a lot of leverage here. They don't. So if Notre Dame says, hey, we're not going to cover your travel costs, okay. But South Florida needs Notre Dame on their schedule. And, okay, I could see, by the way, where Notre Dame would say, if for whatever reason this year, if the game doesn't happen, the series is canceled. That makes sense. If the first game of the 3-game series doesn't happen, the rest of it doesn't happen. Because if you're Notre Dame, you don't want it to then be a home and home. I mean, think about it. If the first game doesn't happen, then the next two, it's no longer a 2-for-1, it's a home and home. Well, Notre Dame's not going to agree to that. So, I mean, I know you hate South Florida, but...
Hi, I'm David Honeymeyer, COO of Seminole Gaming. At Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, the health and safety of the team members...
I hate to break it to you, Foot Fan. This is where it looks like jealousy. This is where a guy like me likes to take shots at UCF because this is just trying to point out, oh, they made a really good deal, but they suck. That's what it looks like. It's like, sorry, dude.
Here's, Foot Fan, what would be the harm of you guys taking South Florida's scheduling approach? You would get all these premier teams on your schedule. Okay, you'd win a couple of these games.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is, would these teams schedule you like?
Right.
I don't know if they would.
I mean, that to me should have been your approach. You should have offered a 2-for-1 to everybody. You should have held the press conference with your phone number,
Anthony,
and said, "We'll display anybody a 2-for-1."
Hey, appreciate your time this morning. We're about 30 seconds or so from going on. It's me and David Moulton. David goes first. I'm Mark. I go second. And again, really appreciate your time this morning. All right. We can plug in and we'll be ready to go in just a second.
Even if you've tried Viagra and other drugs and they've failed you, we will help. Studies have shown that we offer the most effective non-surgical treatments for ED, even if you have other medical conditions. They're generally no problem.
Well, they had a huge advantage. I would agree with you there, where you think of where Levitt had them and even Skip's first year when they went to Notre Dame and won. And you think of where they were. I mean, they got to number 2 in the country at one point.
We do. See our licensed medical staff. If we can't show you,
and they won at Auburn.
Yeah.
I
mean, you think of that. That was a crazy year, what they pulled off early.
MyMensClinic.com or call 239.
I mean, we went to a Friday night game where they knocked off West Virginia when they were ranked in the top 5.
125. Again,
and Ray J was sold out. It was
sold out. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. We did our show there.
Yes, we did. We had Sean McDonough on.
You're live.
"30 minutes after the hour, halfway through Miller and Moulton on this first Thursday of the month. Thanks so much for being with us. 1 week tonight, Texans and Chiefs. The NFL season is 7 days away. The college season is already underway. Anthony Dasher covers The Bulldogs of Georgia for UGAsports.com, UGAsports.com. It's part of the Rivals Network, and you can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Dasher1, Anthony Dasher, the number 1. Anthony, top of the morning to you. Hope you and everyone in your circle is healthy these days. How are you?
Good morning. We're doing well. Thank you very much for asking.
All right. We are a couple of cynical sports talk show hosts. So with that, to let you know that sometimes we look at the glass as half empty as opposed to half full, that both Miller and Moulton, when they saw the news that Jamie Newman opted out, thought to ourselves, well, he must have opted out before he was beaten out. Any truth to our cynical view?
Well, you're not the only two cynical with Jamie Newman and his decision at the time, as I say. And that, the timing is very suspect. There is no question, about that. And I know what he said in his tweet concerns over COVID-19, and I'm sure you read Kirby Smart's response, saying this is pretty much their protocol when it comes to anybody who wants to opt out. They get their best wishes and everybody moves on. But the timing, less than a month before the start of the season is a little bit odd. But yeah, I mean that's kind of along the same lines I'm thinking. I mean, JT Daniels, has come in and from all we've heard is performed very well. Dwan Mathis too. I mean, I can't sit here and not mention his name. And yeah, and it's just been speculated. And I mean, again, this is kind of way my mind has worked on this. That perhaps Jamie saw he wasn't going to win the job, and he's a guy who has high hopes for the NFL, but he didn't want to, leave Georgia, go into the NFL as a quote unquote backup quarterback. So perhaps he thought, or maybe an agent thought, that it might be in his best interest to just leave now and just prepare for the NFL draft, go to the combine, and try to and make his way, doing that instead of come to Georgia, not winning the job, and maybe have it people look at him a little bit funny because he wasn't a starting quarterback.
Anthony, the one thing I thought with Daniels, and a lot of the people we talked to leading up to the season kind of gave us this thought as well, is that Daniels was a little more versatile, could run and throw where Newman Daniels is a little bit more of the drop back passer. And with losing a lot in that offensive line and that being a part of the team that worries me most about Georgia going forward, there were a lot that thought a dual threat quarterback was advantageous early and that maybe JT Daniels would get it later. What is this, does this lead anything more of the line being a little bit more ready than we thought? Because I don't care who's taking the snap under center. They need an offensive line, and I'm worried about the Dogs' offensive line, Anthony.
I'm not quite as worried as the offensive line as some are. I mean, I look who they're putting over at left tackle, for example. I know Andrew Thomas, number 4 pick, whatever it was, to the Giants, but Jamari Sauer is a former 5-star kid. He's somebody who hadn't played the position, but there's every expectation will be able to come in and do well. And the only position they don't have really any experience, that guys who have not started will be right tackle. Well, it's either going to be one or two a redshirt freshman, a redshirt sophomore, or a true freshman. That's the only spot. But otherwise, the line I don't think is really that big of a problem. But I think it was more about JT Daniels, though, just really kind of making an impression. And what I do believe, though, is this will change how Georgia will go about it as business, like you mentioned. Every expectation was, every hope was, I think, for Todd Monken, he would have a quarterback who could run, who could throw, who could really convert the RPOs. And that was Daniels. It's going to be more of a, in my opinion, probably going to be more of an offense like we saw with Jake Fromm. I mean, Jake was pretty much of a statue back there. There was concern that Daniels, coming off that ACL injury, is not quite ready to move around. Maybe opposite like we wasn't going to move around anyway like a Jamie Newman, but to have him back that's going to change the way they run the offense, I believe, as opposed to Newman were going to be there.
He's Anthony Dasher. He's managing editor of UGAsports.com, UGAsports.com. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Dasher1, Anthony Dasher and the number 1. Is inexperience the biggest, question? The biggest factor heading into this season for Georgia? They are replacing a whole lot of bodies on the offensive side. I mean, you would think a tough early schedule, the cocktail party looming in November as it could mean the East again. You just wonder, is this a year where this team is going to need to take some lumps and grow up, and they'll be better in 2021?
Well, it's all going to be depending on the quarterback situation. I mean, wide receiver to me is probably the position there's probably the most questions on. Of course, George Pickens is, maybe one of the best in the SEC, but after that, they're still looking for several guys rather, to be able to step up. Now, Demetrius Robertson, a guy who has potential. His freshman year at college, he caught 58 passes for 700 yards, and I believe it was 8 touchdowns. They're not quite lived up to expectations since coming to UGA, but they need somebody else to complement Pickens. They've got some talented players. They've got some pretty good recruits coming in. Marcus Rosemary, 2 freshmen, Jermaine Burton, 2 guys who have been impressed a lot. But it's going to need more than a one-man show of receiver for I think have success they want. But again, the offensive line, I'm not quite as maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm totally wrong on this. I'm just not quite as worried about that. The depth of they've recruited extremely well. Sam Pittman did a wonderful job before he left for Arkansas, and Matt Lucas come in, and they were able to secure another couple of 5-star kids in this freshman class. So I'm just not really as worried about the experience factor, being that big of a problem. It's the wide receivers that I think don't have to grow up and step up for Georgia to have success offensively. Rather, they're going to need to have.
I'm looking at my Phil Steele book before everything happened. It said Virginia, East Tennessee State, then Alabama, Louisiana, Monroe, and Vanderbilt. Now it's, one game it's a little bit easier to start off, and then it's Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama.
Yeah.
Bam! I mean, this gets serious. It gets ugly early for the Dogs. We're going to find out everything. Obviously, this is such a different year, but Anthony, do you ever recall Georgia coming out of the gate with this type of schedule?
It's been a while. There was a year or 3, a few years ago where they had Notre Dame and had some other, pretty tough conference games, right there in a row. But, no doubt. I mean, Auburn is going to be an improved Auburn team this year with Nick's at quarterback, and then Tennessee, obviously, I think everybody can agree is going to be better than they were last season. And Alabama and Tuscaloosa, that's a tougher 3, I think, as you're going to find, maybe even in the country. I don't know. It's really going to be a huge challenge. Like you said, we'll know very quickly how Georgia is. And again, get back to the offense for a second. I think that's one of the biggest concerns for Georgia with not having a spring practice. I mean, of course, Daniel wasn't even here. He didn't get here till June. So that's going to be a big problem too, just how quickly this offense can gel. I mean, even if Newman was still here, that was still going to be, I think, a problem initially. Because early on, defenses, at least in my experience, have only been maybe just a little bit ahead of the offense, and especially now. New quarterback, new offensive coordinator, they have to get things in order, very fast. And I'm just not sure. Again, especially against that kind of competition, that's going to be difficult to do.
Anthony, when Dan Mullen took over at Florida, they were a couple of levels below Georgia in terms of roster to roster. And while Georgia has continued to recruit at a very high level, heading into this season, when you look at talent and experience, Georgia's roster, the Gators roster. You follow recruiting closely. How close do you think Florida now is this year? This year, when you combine experience and talent, the 2 rosters, how close has Florida got?
I think Florida is definitely closed the gap. I mean, I think the job Coach Mullen has done the short time he's been there has been pretty impressive. I mean, especially I know the kids they have coming in this upcoming class that they're working on has really been very good. And then you look at the players that Georgia has lost at some key spots. We mentioned the offensive line. I mean, losing Andrew Thomas, losing Isaiah Wilson, losing Solomon Kennedy. That's three guys who are in the NFL right now. That's that is a big deal, and I won't sit here and deny that. But I think right now the schools are still pretty close. I thought might still give Georgia just a little bit of an edge if you just want to start counting the stars, the 5 stars, 4 stars, et cetera, et cetera. There's no doubt in the short time that Dan Mullen is there, that has really picked up, and I think that's a lot closer than it was 2 years before he got here. But he's definitely got him on the right track.
Who outside of the Gators is there anybody else in the East that you have an eye on? How close is Tennessee? Is that the team we should be looking at, or is there someone else?
Kentucky.
South Carolina?
I think it's Kentucky. I
Yeah.
really think it's Kentucky. I mean, their offensive line, talking about offensive line, they may have the best offensive line in the conference this year. I'm just saying, you look at the guys they've got coming back, the experience they have, and that's going to be a tough group. And they get their quarterback back this year, who was hurt all of last season. They've got some talented players. And Coach Dukes has done, I think, a pretty doggone good job. Considering the challenges he has in that program. And Tennessee's going to be a lot better, I think. But Kentucky's the one to keep an eye on. And of course, I think when they open up at Auburn this year, that's going to be a good test for them. That's the game they can pull out. I mean, definitely keep an eye on the Wildcats this season.
Anthony, thanks for your time and your insight. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, safe travels. Hopefully we can do this again.
Hope so. Thanks, guys.
Anthony Dasher covers the Dogs for UGAsports.com, UGAsports.com. It's part of the Rivals Network. Follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Dasher1, Anthony Dasher and the number 1. 19 minutes before the hour. That schedule could get Georgia this year.
I'm going to say it again. Consecutive weeks: Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama. Pack a lunch for that one, gang.
Now, Tennessee's at home, correct?
Tennessee is at home. They open with Arkansas. That's the one I couldn't remember. So they play Arkansas on the road. They're winning that game. They host Auburn the following week. They host Tennessee after that. They travel to Alabama. I mean, then they've got Kentucky and Florida. I mean, they've got a 5-game run. That's their schedule. Every game they play is consecutive. Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Florida. I guess they got a week off before the Florida game. They get their bye before the Gators, and they're going to need it.
Georgia's going to need to win the cocktail party.
Yes, they are.
I think when they play Florida in Jacksonville, the Gators will have the lead in the East. And the Dogs.
They could be tied as well. But, yeah, I know where you're going with that.
So, because Florida's got what? A&M and LSU really on their schedule before they have to play Georgia?
And I don't think Florida wins both, I guess. I could see them both having one loss playing that game, David.
But I could see Georgia losing twice heading into the cocktail party. And that Georgia's going to enter that game in a must-win situation. Now, if they win it, they own the breaker, and the rest of their schedule after the cocktail party should be a walkthrough. But should be. We'll see. This could be the year the SEC beats each other up. We've been saying that for a long time, but you add 2 extra conference games this year, Mark. I mean, come on now. Supposedly they're all recruiting all these good players. You set them up to play one another 10 times. Shouldn't they then beat each other up?
Yes, they should.
And also,
absolutely, David. This should be the year that 8-2 wins the SEC.
Also, there's not, everybody has a tough crossover, and not just because Georgia plays Auburn every year and Florida plays LSU. They added A&M to Florida's schedule. Well, Bama was already on Georgia's schedule. Auburn has to play the 3 they play in the West, and Kentucky and Georgia from the East. I mean, everybody's got seemingly more games on the schedule, Mark, where you go, wow, they could lose that. And as you pointed out, Georgia's schedule was laid out for them this year. It was laid out very Alabama-like laid out. Alabama's lost 1 conference game before November since Nick Saban's first year.
And
1.
It's by design, gang.
Well, I'm sorry. They've lost 1 in September, 2 in October.
But it's
think about that. Right. 12 years.
And Nick has said, I think we should have 9 conference games. But if we're not going to have them, I'm going to set myself up to give myself the best chance to be in the playoff.
2008 through 2019, 12 seasons. They've lost 3 times before November in conference play. 3. South Carolina beat them in 2010, and Ole Miss beat them in back-to-back years, 2014 and 2015. That's it. Now, in part, it's because the better teams on their schedule have ended up being in November, and they don't play Georgia and Florida very often at all anymore. But Bama's schedule is usually laid out, and Georgia's schedule this year was laid out like that. And now nobody's schedule, I think, is laid out. Miller and Moulton, 15 minutes before the hour. Today was the day when, coming up, Matt Murschel, who covers college football for the Orlando Sentinel, we're going to ask him about UCF in his own backyard. The 10 guys opting out. Memphis' top running back left. Does this make Cincinnati the best team in the AAC? And can UCF find their way into the playoff this year if they run the table? Matt Murschel to talk college football at large at the top of the hour. Josh Tolentino, who covers the Dolphins for The Athletic. Season gets underway in 10 days, folks. NFL, week from tonight, Texans and Chiefs. Miller and Moulton. Today was the day when. Next. Thanks for listening. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Drive home with the Doug Gottlieb Show.
When he gave the Seahawks bench the finger, and he got hurt in his last game with Seattle. Like, are you kidding me? The guy went into the locker room of the Dallas Cowboys wearing a Seahawks jersey. You want to talk about a piece of crap, dude? You don't do that, ever. All right, bud, see who you are. I'm not a fan.
Doug Gottlieb, afternoons at 3 on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Let's face it, these are stressful times. New routine, the constant bombardment of bad news, and trying to keep you and your family safe all the time. It's Frank for Center for Men's Health. During these stressful times, your mood is so critical, and nothing's more important to a guy's mood than testosterone. The single greatest issue for guys with low T is mood. And the single greatest
Foot fan, are you talking about UCF?
care is a great
Has a bond issue requiring 7 home games?
when they start, and most
Well,
kids leave
I mean,
their mood improves once they get treated. And
which allows them, they can then have one road conference game
ForumH.com can make in your life.
or one road non-conference game. My bad.
For a couple of years. And
So, you know,
now I have the energy to work out from home, and that'll put you in a good mood too. C4MH.
you could do it.
Fresh treatment plan is convenient, affordable,
You could do it.
safe.
It's tricky, but you could do it.
West Florida. There's one near you right now. Find out more. Go to C4MH.com.
For professional roofing, the name you need to know is D.R. Martineau.
Dan Martineau here, owner of D.R. Martineau Roofing of Southwest Florida. I've been repairing and replacing roofs for 27 years. We operate with integrity, knowledge, and service.
See, I think ultimately UCF would have gotten the games. Not all of them, but they would have gotten the 2-for-1s. Boy, those teams would have loved to have been able to say to a bunch of Florida kids, hey, we're playing in Florida. Number one. And number two, as Mark has pointed out for a while now, college football has an attendance problem.
Charlotte, Lee, and Collier counties are here to help 24/7.
Even at some of the big boy places. And UCF's a quality game. UCF's a game in which their fan base would go,
You're damn right.
I'd go to this game.
1664 for more information. Or visit
I'd go to this game. Let's see what they got.
US, you're never stuck on the water.
When we talk the talk, this is what we talk about.
He's talking about right and wrong.
We back it up.
Talk about what you know.
The other thing that Danny White should have realized, but hey, he was a political candidate playing to his base. I mean, that's all. He wasn't interested, you know.
Fox Sports Radio.
But if you look back historically, the only way for the outsider to become the insider, you got to schedule who you can get, and then you got to beat them.
We're dedicated to providing a safe environment.
I mean, we read the schedule from, it was like Bobby Bowden in 1983. He played 5 games in a row, all of them on the road, all against top 20 teams in the country. Went 3-2.
Such as screening and high-tech temperature checks for team members and guests.
I mean, it's a
But
joke.
that's where I laugh at UCF trying to tell me they deserve something. You're not Florida State, and Bobby Bowden did it. So I don't know what to tell you. Danny White's not anything close to Bobby Bowden. Go play teams and win. That's all.
Cleaning and sanitizing common areas and high-touch services. We remain committed and dedicated
No. I didn't say UCF has an attendance problem. I said some of the
College
big
football
boys.
has a
College football has an attendance problem, and some of the big boy places have. Hell, the Gators have had an attendance problem the last couple of years. They haven't exactly packed the swamp.
We can fix it. Even if you've tried Viagra and other drugs and they've failed you, we will help.
So
Have shown that we offer the most
that's what I mean. That the bigger boy would have actually gone. Well, you know what? We're going to get
You
an
go
extra.
play. I'm not saying you're going to get Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan, but you play anybody else in the Big Ten, Wisconsin, Michigan State. It's a game for them. People are going to show up to see UCF go to East Lansing. They're going to show up, and you can win that game.
Lori, once again, this is not a UCF issue. It's the other guys. We're talking about the other guys and why we think they would have scheduled UCF. And yes, you would have traveled well. Lori, you're going to win some of these games. That's another reason why I wanted you to schedule them. You're going to win some of them.
But now we're talking about USF because they've scheduled all of these games.
And then once you would have won those games, there's no excuses anymore.
You're live.
Matt Murschel, who covers college football for the Orlando Sentinel, will join us coming up in a little more than 10 minutes time. 479-5551 is how you can chime into the show on the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text and talk line. Can answer the poll question at millerandmoulton.com. Which of these four teams has the best shot this year to win a championship? Rays, Heat, Lightning, Bucks. That's right. This year, all four are now viable championship contenders. Time now for
Miller and Moulton's Today Was the Day When, giving you the history of today's date so you're a beacon of useless knowledge around the office.
Useless, but a lot of fun to talk about.
This is Today Was the Day When, Fox Sports Radio and FoxSportsFM.com.
Today was the day when, brought to you by the Fort Myers Miracle. Remember, when we had a logo you didn't have to explain to your children. 1928 we start today, David. And I'm sure you remember this. You may have even been there. It looked, we always talk about Franco, wearing the Seahawks jersey at the end. And, all the players in the wrong jerseys. But this is the one that really probably bothered me the most. I don't know if it was you the same way, David, but 1928, future Hall of Famer Ty Cobb records his 4,191st and final career hit as a pinch hitter for the Philadelphia A's. And it never just sat well with me, David Cobb in that A's uniform.
Right.
1932, Jimmy Foxx smashes his 50th and 51st home runs to become the third player to reach 50 in a season, joining Babe Ruth and...
I'm sorry, what was that again?
1932, Jimmy Foxx got 50 and 51, the third to get 50 in a season. Babe Ruth and Hack Wills is the other. 1947, pitcher Bill McCann no hits the Washington Senators. He was a rookie for the A's. In 47, also the Yankees have 18 hits, all singles, in beating the Red Sox 11-2 at Fenway. In 1957, Warren Spahn sets a National League record for a left-hander with his 41st shutout, beating the Cubs 8-0. 1971, John Lennon leaves the UK for New York City, never to return. 1973, Billy Casper wins at the Greater Hartford Open, known at that time as the Sammy Davis Jr. Greater Hartford Open, and it was his 50th tour title. Didn't really think of Billy Casper as a guy that won 50 times on tour. Oscar Robertson retired today in 1974. Today in 1977 was the last broadcast of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. For some reason, I didn't think that show ended when I was 8. It seemed like it lasted a lot longer than that, because that was a staple in our house every week. More reasons why David wants games to end in a tie. 1981 at Fenway, the longest game in Fenway Park history, is suspended after 19 innings. The Mariners would go on to win 8-7 in 20 the following morning. In 86, the Astros and Cubs used 53 players including 17 pitchers in a 2-day, 18-inning marathon. Astros 8-7 over the Cubs. 1989, Chrissy Evert beats 15-year-old Monica Seles 6-0, 6-2. It was her 101st and last U.S. Open singles victory. 1994, Terry Dean tosses a record 7 touchdowns in the first half as the Gators beat New Mexico State 70-21. On that same day, Miami beats Georgia Southern 56-spit for their 58th consecutive home win, setting an NCAA record.
Yes, and as fans of Terry Dean will tell you, and then Spurrier benched him like an hour later.
1995 was the debut of both the Carolina Panthers and my Jacksonville Jags. They would both lose. The Panthers in overtime to the Falcons, 23-20, and the Jags would lose 10-3 to the Houston Oilers. Mario Lemieux became the first player of the modern era to buy the team that he once played for today in 1999 when he became the owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Saved them.
Yes, he did. They were moving. They were gone. It was
They were gone. Yep.
And his name escapes me. I know the guy who sold the team to Lemieux. And as I asked him, I said, did you want to say, I owed him $50 million. I said, here, take this thing from me. If you were born today, you share your birthday with Whitey Bulger, the Boston gangster, born today in 1929. Dick Motta, longtime coach, born today in 1931. Don Brewer, the drummer from Grand Funk Railroad, born today in Flint, Michigan, just because I wanted to say Flint, Michigan and Grand Funk Railroad. Charlie, were you born in 65 or 66, David?
65, December.
Okay, you're the same age as Charlie Sheen. And you know what? You look a lot better. He's a wreck. Without the plugs and the makeup and all that, that man's a wreck. Benny Blades, born today in 1966. The Freak, born right here in Fort Myers. He is 44 years old today. And Shaun White, the snowboarder, is 34. And that is today was the day when on this September 3rd. Missed it by a second. Son of a...
Call the doctor, the pool doctor.
Hi, Dr. Mark here. Your old
That picture that I'm looking at, he looks like death warmed over.
We'll install a new Pentair energy-efficient pump, saving you over $500 a year. We're a family company, and for over 40 years, we've been doing business right.
The prescription is the Pool Doctor for award-winning pool service, repairs, and unheard of $39 diagnostic calls. That's mypooldoctor.com or 239-574-1133. State certified CPC 057088.
The Kentucky Derby, the most exciting 2 minutes in sports.
Find that bird has won the Kentucky Derby. An impossible result here. And it is all Barbaro. It's a blind California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby. American Burrow and Victor Espinoza.
Well, and he has lived hard. There is no doubt about that.
He, as far as that winning.
Although I actually, the advancements they've made in HIV treatment now, I mean, and when you've got money like that, the cocktails that he can afford,
yeah, okay, Hops, but Magic looks fine. I mean, just for the record, you want to get into the Magic looks fine. Charlie Sheen, this is not an AIDS thing. This is a cocaine thing.
Right.
You cannot do cocaine like Skittles and expect to look normal in your late 50s.
Boy, I could go for a good bag of Skittles.
10,000 miles per year, $42.94 to assigning plus tax title 0 security deposit 1388 per month without mark for 70 months 0% APR with 0 down with under approval offers don't combine.
WFSX AM from Naples to Cape Coral and all of Southwest Florida. 103.3 Fox Sports Radio. We are Fox Sports. Here's what's trending now. Brought to you by the Center for Men's Health. C4MH.com.
Matt Rochelle.
Matt, good morning. Mark Miller and David Moulton in Southwest Florida. How are you?
Pretty good. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great, man. We're doing great. As I say, rinse, wash, repeat. We're still on the same program.
That could be all of 2020 at this point.
It
right?
really is, man. It really is. There's just no two ways about it. But we got football in a week, Matt. That's a good thing, right?
We got football tonight too. So I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, what are we at Southern Miss tonight? Is that where we are tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a Southern Miss game tonight. I know it's supposed to be a bigger night, but hey, we'll take it.
Yep, that's it.
Miller. I gave him a little shot.
You did. You
Just
did.
a
You
little
did.
rub and
Right.
brace.
And Moulton. He is the gentleman who's got a few days off, and he entered into the garage, and he has not left. He is rebuilding a tranny. He is mixing and matching sets of golf clubs to come up with just the right 14.
Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, broadcasting live from the Kobe Cooling Remote Studios, where it's always cool and comfortable.
Oh, I like it. It's up to you now. It's up to you. I like it.
Now, the best local sports show this town has ever heard. Here's Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
It is the beginning of the third and final hour of Miller and Moulton. Thanks so much for being with us on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. We're streaming at millerandmoulton.com. We're broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels, and you could see a nice picture of Matt Murschel if you're watching us on YouTube and Twitch.tv right now. The gentleman with the bow tie, who you can follow on Twitter at OS Matt Murschel, since he covers college football for the Orlando Sentinel, OS Matt Murschel. Matt, top of the morning to you. Hope you and your friends and family are safe and doing okay during all this. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, we're all doing well. We're just excited about getting some college football over the next couple of days and actually officially kicking off the season, I guess.
Let's start out right in your backyard. 10 players from UCF opt out. 2 are starters. Just how much surprise was there to that? Is there anything more there than we've read? And this is a team that, when you throw out the 9 Pac-12 and Big Ten schools that were ranked, was already around 15th in the country, and looking at a possibility of an undefeated season in a playoff, maybe. How big are these departures?
Well, I think the 2 starters, as you mentioned, I think Tay Gowan, their redshirt senior defensive back, is a big one, and losing defensive lineman Kalia Davis was big. It was a little surprising just because of the number. I think the sheer number at first. We had kind of heard that there might be some players who were interested in opting out. Josh Heupel, UCF coach, had told us previously that they had some players that were in the middle of filling out their paperwork, and he didn't want to let us know who those players were until the paperwork was done. So getting some of these guys, you hear obviously the concern is about COVID-19. Tay Gowan posted on his Twitter account yesterday that the decision to opt out and basically go to the NFL draft was made because he's got a little daughter that has some health problems, and he had tested positive for COVID, and he was not, as he said, I'm not going to put my daughter's life, on the line for this. And you have to respect those kind of decisions, when it comes down to what's going on in our country. So it's the sheer number, yes, is probably the most we've seen in the country. But again, a lot of these guys were some backups, and some of these guys are going to come back. Khalil Davis says he's coming back. He's just not going to play this year. Devontae Dawson, another cornerback who announced he's opting out, is saying he's coming back. So I think this, unfortunately, is the new norm this year with everything going on in our country, that we're seeing college football players deciding their health or the health of their loved ones is more important than playing football this time.
Matt, do you think, because as Mark pointed out, there's 9 Pac-12 and Big 12 teams that are ranked right now. If they don't play, or they play so late that they're not going to figure in the national equation, that means that Cincinnati, UCF are going to move automatically, really, week 1 into the top 15. And as you know, teams like UCF and Cincinnati, Memphis, they gain about a spot a week if they keep methodically winning. Well, Matt, that would get an undefeated AAC team right there in the top 5, if you know what I mean, come, decision-making time. Do you think that an undefeated AAC team this year has a real shot to get the 4th seed in the playoff because of the dynamics that are at work?
Yeah, if there's probably, this is the best season, and I hate to say this because of obviously what's going on with the pandemic, but this is the best opportunity an AAC team has to get into the playoff is this year. Because again, if you're undefeated, if you've played, a decent schedule, you look around and you look at maybe some of these other teams. The SEC teams might be beating up on each other because they're playing an SEC, schedule only. You look at the ACC without, with Clemson possibly being the top team, obviously. They haven't had a strong number 2 team maybe to make their case yet. This is a perfect opportunity to get in there. So if there is an undefeated team and somehow they don't land in the top 4, then you really have the argument to scream and yell and say, what more do we need to do? I mean, you basically are playing in a year where, as you pointed out, there's only maybe 74, 76 teams available. So to be able to not, to start of the season maybe ranked 15th, once you take out the Big Ten and Pac-12 teams, and not be able to get in the playoff if you're undefeated would be a grave injustice based on everything that's going on. But that being said, we know that talking with the playoff selection committee over the years, that there is, as much as they won't admit this, there is a little bit of a bias against, group of 5 teams. I mean, it almost takes that perfect season to be able to find a way in there. Maybe this happens to be that year. I would believe that there'd be a lot of emphasis to see that happen. But again, until we actually see a team jump into that top 4 spots, I'm just not going to believe it until I see it. So yeah, this would be a good year for it to happen.
Well, Matt, put it this way. We literally had fun with the poll question and said, if the choice is between an undefeated UCF team or an Ohio State team that didn't play a game, who gets the 4th spot? And our audience still thought Ohio State would get put into the college football playoff because, well, they're as cynical as we are on this show from time to time. One of the things in what you were talking about got me thinking is we have a lot of UCF fans, and they have turned into a bit of an angry bunch. If you say anything derogatory at all about UCF, they feel that they have been slighted. And USF has been winning the scheduling game. Now, there's a canyon between the 2 football programs right now. But USF is getting talked about because they're getting Alabama and they're getting Notre Dame. And at the end of the day this year, these old comparative games, now that USF is playing Notre Dame, well, that's one of those games that the committee could look at if UCF runs a table and say, well, there's a comparative schedule game. But in looking back, did Danny White get too arrogant wanting just home and homes with teams and not accepting the opportunity for a 2-for-1 for Florida, not trying to get these Alabama games, not trying to get this Notre Dame schedule? Or is UCF doing it right?
Well, I think, UCF is doing it right. I think part of what has happened is, I think because of the success so quickly, let's not forget, guys, they went from going winless in 2015, 0-12, to all of a sudden, basically winning 25 straight games, and being a factor, when we're talking about the college football playoff New Year's Day games, when you talk about the New Year's Six games. They happened really quickly, with a quick rise. And I think during that time period, you started seeing teams thinking, well, I'm not going to play UCF. I'm not going to go to Orlando and risk getting beat in Orlando against a really good UCF program, and then have them come here and maybe do the same sort of thing. So I think there was some school of thought where there's a lot of these Power 5 schools that are thinking, I'm not really there yet. I'm not really ready to go there and risk losing a game there, especially one where it's not going to be a tremendous payday, so to speak. And so I think that's kind of what's happened. And I agree with you. If USF scheduling Notre Dame, Alabama, they're winning that kind of headline battle. When you're talking about some of these games. But in the end, that's going to help UCF. I think if USF plays well against Notre Dame, and let's say UCF beats USF at the end of the year, that's going to always make the case for them. Same thing with Cincinnati and the Memphises, and the more teams that they play, that just helps out if UCF gets those wins. And we saw a little bit of that kind of impact last year. When UCF was, lost, 3 games and over by a total of 7 points, that even though they were 10-3, there was so much of a disappointment factor in that, the idea that they didn't win. So I think that's part of it. I think for Danny, he wants those home and homes. He wants to be able to bring big name, programs down to Orlando, down to UCF and play them without, giving up this idea of going, the 2-for-1s. Now, will that may change in a couple of years? Yeah, that possibly could. Maybe if Danny thinks we're struggling to find, ways to fill the schedule, we're gonna have to do something different. That may happen. But I think at this point right now, he's been 100% behind this idea of the home for homes, and he's hoping that at some point it'll end up paying off and things will balance out.
He's Matt Murschel. He covers college football nationally for the Orlando Sentinel. You can follow Matt on Twitter at OS Matt Murschel, MURSCHEL, OS Matt Murschel. What storyline interests you the most before just about everybody kicks off? What is the one that maybe we haven't talked about that interests you the most heading into this season?
Well, I think to me, you asked me that question 7 months ago, would have been a way different answer probably than it is right now, just based on what the pandemic is. I want to see the impact of how, what players have gone through. I want to see, the testing they're going through each week. I want to see what that's going to look like. I want to see what a football game looks like with only 10,000 fans. I want to see how the players respond to that. I think it's easy for people just to assume, okay, well, they're not going to have fans, or they're going to have a limited amount of fans in games, and that's going to be fine. But you talk to players and coaches, and they feed off the energy of the crowd, and not having that energy in the stadium, having kind of a different vibe is going to be interesting. And there are teams right now that you're seeing this impact of this pandemic, not just, we're talking about, conditioning, but we're looking around and seeing the impact on the big picture. Look at Georgia, for instance, guys, who had Jamie Newman, a transfer from Wake Forest at quarterback. We're 2 weeks away from the season starting, and Newman announces yesterday he's opting out to go to the NFL draft. That's huge news 2 weeks before the season starts, and that leaves Georgia now with another transfer in USC quarterback, JT Daniels. But here's Georgia, a team that was probably going to be ranked in the top 10. Now all of a sudden has a quarterback issue. We could see that happen in other issues and other teams. If there's a positive test and players have to be quarantined, there's not a chance that you could have the number 1 team in the country maybe lose 5 or 6 players in a week and be forced to play with backups. And that could make a huge impact on what happens to these teams if they win or lose these games moving forward. So to me now, this day, that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing. And I want to see how coaches respond, how players respond. And are we going to have is it going to feel like a college football season, or is it going to feel something a little bit different?
Well, there's no doubt, just from the standpoint of tailgating, it's going to be different. Just walking around. If you're one of those 10,000, how different is it going to feel for you? And Matt, I guess on that note, when you look forward, when you look at the crystal ball beyond 2020, what are the lasting effects of the pandemic? What are you either most looking forward to or most fearful of? Is it the financial difficulties of what could happen to programs, or now the SEC scheduling 10 games and the demand from the fan base going, we need this? Because as we've pointed out on this show, college football does have an attendance problem, and conference games are far more appealing to those people that have to stick a big check to these universities just to get their seats.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's going to be believe me, guys, there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now during this during this season that I think a lot of athletic directors, a lot of college presidents, a lot of commissioners are looking at and think we might be able to carry this on for the next couple of years. One of those is, as you mentioned, is this idea maybe of expanding the conference schedules, maybe going from 8 to 10 if you're the SEC, maybe trying to keep your schedule as difficult as it can, knowing that's going to impact maybe where you land in the college football playoff rankings. I think the economic impact is going to be far-reaching. I think it's going to go past at least a decade. And I think there's going to be some major changes to how college athletics spend money. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of moves forward when we look at how college coaches, let's say, their contracts are going to be set up, how things like that nature are going to be. If schools are going to continue to spend freely when it comes to the arms race of facilities and, weight rooms and things like that? Are they going to continue to spend money like it was going out of style? I also think what's going to be a big factor, we really haven't talked about it because it hasn't come into play, is the name, image, and likeness issue that really kind of starts up in January. When that name, image, and likeness, legislation goes through, it's going to become, an interesting dynamic with players now having, all sorts of possibilities to make money through social media accounts and things like that. So the game of college football is, from what started in January 2020 into what it's going to look like in 2021, 2022, is going to be a really different beast. And I think it's going to look a lot different than people are going to be used to seeing. And I think it's been a game changer, not just because of a pandemic, but I think the pandemic is going to kind of kick things off, and we're going to see a lot of changes that for the good in some cases and maybe not for the good in others.
Well, Matt, we think one of these two things is going to happen sooner rather than later, that the big boys just decide, you know what, we're literally just going to break away. There's more money in it for ourselves if we break away, we hoard all the money for us, and the heck with everybody else. Do the best you can, knock yourself out. But we also think that all the schools may look at the Olympic sports, if you will, and go, yeah, I don't know if we can keep playing them. These may have to become club sports, if you know what I mean. That I don't know if we can keep losing money on 15 plus sports a year. And you know what? We're not going to offer them at the varsity level anymore. And we're going to not offer it for both men and women also. And that bye-bye, so long, farewell, at which point you wonder how long the NCAA can really survive.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the Olympic sports are going to have a huge impact with everything that's going on because of the money. You've seen it already. You've seen schools, cutting baseball and tennis and some of these other sports, just swimming, and they're getting rid of those because they realize they can't support these things with what's going on economically. And so I think that's true. And I think you're going to see too, guys. I think you're going to see a lot of regionalized sports. I think the days of taking your cross country team across from Florida to Oregon are probably going to be gone. I think you're going to see a lot more schools sticking to their region, like
Matt
and in the Midwest.
Matt, if I could, we've talked about it many times on this show. Now, granted, we're in FGCU's backyard, but there's 4 teams in Florida in the ASUN. Obviously, you've got the big 5, if you will, in the state. Then you've got FAU, FIU, you've got Bethune, you've got FAMU. I mean, you could argue, even if USF, UCF, Florida, Miami, and Florida State don't want to take part, you could make the case that the Conference USA, Sun Belt, ASUN schools in basically all of the sports except maybe basketball and football should really be in a conference and just play one another.
Yeah, I would say, and that's something I think it's going to be talked about, because I think it just makes more sense. It makes sense financially. Why charter planes and have to worry about hotel stays that are going to cost way too much money when you can be playing here inside their state, where you can be just traveling on buses, where you can have big tournaments. I still think that the NCAA has talked about this. I think this is going to happen in a lot of ways. Look at like the bubble they did at Disney with the NBA and the MLS. I could see conferences or trying to do that sort of thing. Maybe not because of the COVID, the next couple of years, but just because of the fact that it's be more cost effective. I just think, I've talked to a lot of ADs who've told me, listen, we're looking at everything, how every dime is spent. And if we can save money by, taking a bus here or there, we can play, schools in our state. We would rather do that than travel across the country and have to deal with that. And I think that's going to be one of the big economic impacts that's going to happen because of this, because I think schools now are saying, we're just not going to spend. We've got to make sure it's worth the time and effort. I don't think you're going to see as many games too in some of the Olympic sports. You see a lot of 30, 35 games, depending on what sport it is. I think those are going to get reduced because I just think that in some regards, these schools are saying it's just not cost effective. The bean counters are going to come out a lot, especially over the last 6 months, and they're going to be out more in the next couple of years because they've got to find ways to make it work. And it's not just from the donations are probably going to go down, and you're seeing schools not get as much gifts. That's going to be huge for a lot of these places, and I think that's another reason why they're doing it.
I will say, guys, this sounds great. This is a really smart, intelligent conversation about college athletics. You are forgetting one factor, and that's the egos of these coaches, because we're privy to how hard FGCU has tried to schedule teams within the state who simply refuse to pick up the phone and answer their phone calls. So I would love this to happen. I also would love to be the fly on the wall when the ADs at some of these schools tell their coaches that they've got to play these games, that they, for the same reason that UCF may not get some of the games that USF gets because they're wins for their opponent, UCF and USF might not want to play some of the ASUN and FIU and FAUs because they could lose those games in other sports. And coaches get fired when they lose games, and they don't want to get fired. While this makes a lot of sense, this is going to make for some incredibly uncomfortable conversations between athletic directors and coaches in the coming months.
Oh, very much so. But again, coaches I think are starting to understand that the dynamic has changed. I mean, it's great. Yes, the Nick Sabans can kind of say we're doing this and we're doing that. But when you look around and you look at some of the other sports, I think there are a lot of sports that are thinking to themselves, we've got to do whatever it takes to make it work. We've got to do whatever it needs to be done to continue to have an elite sport, or to continue to play at an elite level. And I think that's what you try to do. You accept the fact that things are going on. Listen, I don't think any of these coaches across the country, in most cases, want to give up, 20, 30% of their salaries, but they understand that, listen, if we don't, this athletic department is crushed. We saw Michigan lay off, 21 or furlough 21, staff members on its athletic department. We saw the NCAA do the same sort of thing. These are things that could wind up being full-time deals because schools can't afford these things. They don't want to see that happen, so coaches are going to have to kind of put up with what they're going to have to see over the next couple of years.
Matt, 10 seconds. Who's the best team in the AAC?
In the AAC?
Yeah.
UCF at this point. But Cincinnati is right there. Cincinnati is right behind them. And this is, I got to tell you right now, I think that Luke Fickell, to me, I know he signed an extension, is probably going to be one of those coaches you hear his name called in the Power Five soon. Just as much as I think Josh Heupel will be too, if he continues to do what he's done at UCF.
Matt, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate your insight. All the best going forward. Stay safe with your travels, and hopefully we can do this again before the month is out.
I hope so. We talk some more football when we get back to it.
That's right. Thanks, Matt.
Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel. Follow him on Twitter at OS for the Orlando Sentinel. OS Matt Murschel, Murschel. Matt Murschel, the Orlando Sentinel. Kind enough to join us once again here on Miller and Moulton. They're already trying to reduce the college baseball season. Got a lot of coaches in the North that are saying, we start too early. We can't keep starting at February 15th. We need to start later. And you got coaches in the South going, well, we can't play later. It gets a little too hot to have the season go into June down here. So when Matt talks about seasons could get shorter, it's an interesting dynamic going on in that sport, Mark. Just throwing that out there. It's just something to pay attention to down the road.
Hey, look like I said, I thought you guys had a really smart, intelligent conversation there. I just know how coaches feel about this, and
That's right.
I just want to be in the room when the AD at USF is telling the women's basketball coach, "I don't give a damn. You got to go down to FGCU and play him."
Right.
I want to hear that conversation, David.
Mark, there's a very good women's basketball coach at South Florida, Jose Fernandez, and he keeps making one valid point after another on Twitter about their program and the conference they play in and this, that, and the other thing. And every time I say to Jose, you are 100% right. If you would schedule FGCU, though, I'd be more inclined to back you.
By the way, you lost UConn. I'm just telling you, you lost those two games that put your RPI through the roof.
Right.
They're gone.
Right.
Okay.
And so, like what we're talking about, he wants to be able to schedule up, and he will not schedule the FGCU, never mind anyone else. Right. So, yep. That will be an interesting day if that time ever comes where it's like, wait, we're only playing in-state schools? You mean all the schools that I haven't returned their phone calls for 10 years?
10 years.
What? Miller and Moulton. Hey, the Dolphins kick off their season in 10 days. I believe it's against the Patriots. I think they're getting the
W.
I think, Mark,
W.
They're getting the Nance Romo Wolfson treatment, in fact, week one. The Dolphins.
Then you know what? you better make a call or a text, and we better have the Wolf on this show at some time. It's been a while since the Wolf joined us.
That is true. I will send that text out. Okay, that's if CBS will just stop having Zoom meetings, because they've had about 5 in the last 2 days.
Tell Tracy that it's a Zoom meeting, and I'll send her the link to the StreamYard thing, and she'll just she's in another meeting.
Yep. You know you're in a CBS Zoom meeting because they're playing either the NFL theme or the college football theme.
That
okay,
they actually play music as you're waiting for it to start?
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's so annoying. Every part of that's annoying because you know what? For the rest of the world, David, we would think that's the greatest thing ever. You know, it's like NFL Films music on hold.
Right.
Holy crap, this isn't a bad classical rock song redone into that version. This is the NFL today. Unless you work for the NFL today, then I would think it would be annoying as hell.
I will say it was cute the first couple times. Like, you know, to hear that SEC on CBS theme, it was kind of like, all right, this is cool. And now when I heard it yesterday, I was like, really? Really? Another blanket meeting? Seriously? Miller and Moulton. Josh Tolentino covers the Dolphins for The Athletic. We will talk to him about camp, Tua, and the Dolphins, year 2 of the rebuild. Just how much progress are they making? Josh Tolentino will join us next on Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
So I'm going to give you all this because somebody joined Twitter.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good afternoon to you.
God damn it, that's great!
Making his debut on social media, and it's nice to be welcomed. I'm delighted to see if I can't serve you in any way, shape, or form. We might chat about a famous date in baseball, or a player, or a team, and hopefully nothing controversial. This is strictly a meeting of friends having some fun talking about our favorite subject. So pull up a chair and be ready to join me, hopefully in the very near future, as we start our careers together on social media. Hi, everybody, and
I'm sorry. There is positives that come out of COVID every day. And if Vin Scully on Twitter isn't one of them, I really don't know what is.
I saw Josh Graham, a host in North Carolina, a sports talk show host, take to Twitter that says, if anyone is ever mean to Uncle Vin, I will hunt you down and kill you.
You're damn right. You're damn right.
What a dear soul he is. Never forget he and Don Drysdale walking up to me and Jack Juka going, would you mind if we sit down and have lunch with you, gentlemen? Yeah, that would be fine, sir. That would be fine. What a half hour that was. At the old vet in Philadelphia for a Dodgers-Phillies game. I was working for a TV station in Wilkes-Barre, and we were down there because the Phillies had called up a bunch of guys from AAA, and they were starting to retool. I think it was like 89. And, you know, the whole Mickey Morandini crew that got called up from the Red Barons. And the last 2 seats in the cafeteria. Drysdale was such a big man, too. Wow. You realized that you took a look at him, and then you realized him standing on a mound with those shoulders in his day, too, in the late 50s and throughout the 60s. And you're like, what a presence. Good-looking guy, too. Really good-looking man. See, Dandy, I'm from North Central Jersey. We didn't go to, we didn't go to Wildwood. Wildwood was a little, too far down for us. Southern half of the state went to Wildwood. Northern half of the state would go to Seaside.
$49 per month. That's right, a new car for just $49 per month. 2020 Kia Rio, just $13,990. Yes, $13,990.
We might hit Wildwood on the way down to AC.
Lenders to get almost anyone approved.
If we're going to go to gamble, we might do Wildwood before or after.
Why? Why buy an overpriced used car?
I'm guessing we're inside of a minute.
Brand new Kia
Yes, we are.
per month.
You should be driving a Kia from Galliana. Galliana Kia.
Pre-Labor Day clearance event going on now at Galliana Kia. 1.5 miles south of Daniel Parkway on US 41.
Hey, Josh, Mark Miller from Miller and Mold. How are you this morning?
Call 239-481-2600.
We are going on here, and literally in seconds. I'm going to patch in now. David goes first. I'm Mark. I go second. In advance, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it. All right.
I think it was a handkerchief.
No, here. Owner of DR Martineau Roofing of Southwest
Sea Isle or Avalon.
Getting a lot of roofs, hurricane and wind today for a free inspection. Google DRM Roofing or call 239-332-1441.
License number CCC 1326954.
For professional roofing, the name you need to know is DR Martineau.
Now back to Miller and Moulton.
All right, now we're getting somewhere.
No. This is Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
The home stretch on this Thursday. Thanks so much for being with us. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com and broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels, simulcast on the Landry Football Network on Twitch.tv. Josh Tolentino is kind enough to join us. He covers the Dolphins for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at JCT Sports. JCT Sports. Josh, thanks for your time, particularly at this hour. Hope you and everyone in your circle are safe and well during these times. How are you?
All right, David, it's a pleasure. And don't worry about the hour, guys. It's, this is kind of the time that we have to test every day for COVID. And training camp is just about over now. And, they've closed practices, but we've been up pretty early the past, few weeks here at camp.
Before we get to the Dolphins, what's been the most bizarre part of covering a team in COVID? We've talked to a lot of beat writers in different cities. Just your take on covering a team and what has been the mess of 2020.
I think it's just all the protocols in place. It's like, I covered the Packers previously. So, in that sense of, covering training camp up there, and, they have that tradition up there where the players bike back to the facility to Lambeau and little children's bikes. And, I think it's just missing the sense of seeing fans there, because from our vantage point at training camp, they practice at this facility, kind of like it's at a college campus, but it's, the way it's set up, it's like high school bleachers almost. And we're at the top, and it's like the entire section's empty, obviously. And I think just missing that sense of fans. And to that point, though, it's going to be pretty unique because there aren't many NFL teams that are going to allow fans, but the Dolphins sure are one of them, up to 13,000 on, for their home opener on week 2. So I think that part will be crazy because I actually just booked my trip for New England. Week 1, they open against the Patriots, and the Patriots have no fans. And then week 2, there will be fans at Hard Rock Stadium. So I think it's just that week in, week out aspect of fans, no fans will be kind of one of the most intriguing parts of the season.
Josh Tolentino covers the Dolphins for The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter at JCT Sports. Josh, and this is probably more likely off the record than on, but whether it was players or coaches, how behind do they feel right now? I mean, obviously everybody's in the same boat, and you're going to start the season and do the best you can, but compared to how they normally feel, how behind do they feel they are?
I think they're most definitely behind, and I think that applies to obviously every team. But with the Dolphins specifically, you can kind of tell that the defense is one step ahead, and I think that just attests to the pieces that are in place. You look at, the Dolphins. They were they spent the most money in the offseason in terms of acquiring different free agents, applying them at various positions of the field. They addressed a lot of needs through the draft and through free agency. But to the same time, the defense, I don't think it's been a secret throughout camp. They're one step ahead of the offense, and whether that be because, you've got established guys on there like a Kyle Van Noy who knows Brian Flores' system from New England, or if it's just, the fact that the offense has a lot of missing pieces in terms of, or questions with what's going to happen specifically at wide receiver and then offensive line. You had Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson opting out. Those are two veteran receivers. And, what's left is really just Preston Williams, and Devontae Parker obviously had a breakout year. Beyond that, there's a lot of questions about who's going to step up and, who's going to take all these snaps away from Wilson and Hurns who've opted out. So to that point, I think the defense is ahead of the offense. And that's been pretty evident in every practice of camp.
Well, we all know the one offensive question. When are we going to see Tua? What's your best guess of how long before we start seeing Tua on Sunday?
Yeah, that's obviously going to be the biggest question of really every day. It's Tua watch. There's so many storylines surrounding the team, but that's number one, and he obviously wears number one. And guys, I'd be very surprised if we saw him at any point before the midpoint of the season. I really think that if he does debut in 2020, which is a realistic possibility, I think it would be later in the season, past week 9, week 10, kind of when, I guess we'll see how the season plays out. I mean, they have a pretty tough schedule early on, with some tough road games, but it all depends where they're at in terms of the playoff picture and, the moves that they made this offseason. It's kind of like those are win now type moves. But I mean, they're a rebuilding team, and I don't think they win more than 6 or 7 games. They're still in that rebuilding stage. So depending on where Fitzpatrick has the team at, and also obviously a big thing is going to be Tua's health. And so far, he actually looks pretty healthy. He looks like he's moving around freely with no restrictions to that hip or any movements at all. I mean, he's moving around pretty well, running with the ball, Mr. Tua Tagovailoa. So I'd be surprised if we saw him any earlier than later in the season.
Dolphins bye is week 11, so in theory they could give Fitzpatrick the first 10 weeks of the season and then transition to Tua if their one-loss record dictates. Josh, how have the first-round picks not named Tua looked? I mean, Austin Jackson, the tackle from USC. They also drafted the offensive lineman early in the second round. He's a guard. The safety out of Texas early in the third round. Raquan Davis was an interesting selection late in the second round. How have those guys looked, and are they going to be asked to start right away?
Yeah, when you talk about the offensive line specifically first, we'll get to the secondary in a minute, but with the offensive line, Austin Jackson, he's actually been kind of the slowest one to show out, at least in camp, from the 3 offensive line that they drafted. The other 2, Robert Hunt and Solomon Kinley, the third one, Solomon Kinley, guys, that's one you're going to have to pay attention to. He was actually drafted. He was the latest offensive line drafted, I think, in the 4th round. And he's been the one showing out the most, and they've been, giving him a lot, and he's handled it pretty well. We're not allowed to say technically until, the first week of the season, depth chart related things in terms of where exactly they've been lining up. But let's just say, they've given him a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him out there just because, he's pretty eager, and really, in just interviewing him, he's been one of the best interviews in camp, Solomon Kinley. But beyond that, another guy that I think will catch the eye of Dolphins fans and really just football fans right away is their other first-round pick, Noah Igbinini. He was out of Auburn. He's only a 20-year-old cornerback, but Noah has really been showing out, and especially with Xavier Howard, he missed all of training camp. So he's been getting a lot of run, with some top players, and he hasn't backed down. He's won a lot of his matchups, and he's another guy that I'm going to be paying attention to, in addition to Tua and Solomon Kinley.
Obviously, you mentioned Tua and the health. Well, last year, Preston Williams came out and really impressed people before he got hurt. And Devontae Parker finally looked like a first-round pick, his 5th year or 4th year in the league. So from a receiver standpoint, I mean, the Dolphins, to me, that's an area where I think they're underappreciated. Is that a fair statement?
I think so, but it's only those two guys right now, and beyond that, I mean, there are a lot of question marks in terms of what's going to happen after that. Obviously, you need more than 2 receivers to make it through the season, and not just that, Devontae, he's a little banged up right now, so even his status is kind of questionable right now. But let's focus on Preston Williams for a second, because throughout camp, when you see Devontae and Preston both on the field at the same time when they're healthy, man, Preston looks really, really good. And he, again, kind of like Tua, he has no restrictions to his movement. He's not wearing a brace on the knee the knee where he tore his ACL last year. And like what you guys just brought up, he was, kind of about to have a breakout year. It looked like, I know it was just his rookie year, but he was looking really nice before the injury. And during camp, you know what? He's picked off right where he left off before the injury. He looks very crisp. And I think just anytime he's out on the field, obviously he's the tallest one out there. But he's been the toughest matchup for any cornerback, whether it be Byron Jones or Noah or, any of those guys. He's been a tough get. So, it wouldn't even be a stretch to say that I think Preston Williams might even end up having a better year than Devontae. I think he's that talented.
Do you think, Josh, that receiver is a position where maybe they pick up a veteran that gets let go? Like Sanu just got let go in New England. That was probably a salary thing more than anything, because he was going to be a very expensive number 4 wide receiver. Do you think this is a position where maybe the Dolphins hit the waiver wire hard?
Yeah, and you know what? We talk about expensive and price points. The Dolphins, they actually have room to play with. I forgot the exact figure right now off the top of my head, but they've got some cap room. So if they really wanted to, they could hit the wire. I'm pretty sure they were intrigued by Fournette, but obviously no one picked him up. In terms of that slot receiver spot, they do have some in-house options that they're intrigued by right now. Two worth mentioning right now are, he's actually tight end, Mike Gesicki. He led the tight end room in receptions and touchdowns last year. And if you guys look at some history with Chan Gailey, their offensive coordinator, and the way he uses tight ends and packages, he likes lighting tight ends up in the slot. So, and actually Gesicki has a lot of experience doing that. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Gesicki out there. And another one that we haven't talked about, their last draft pick, Malcolm Perry. He was a quarterback at Navy. They drafted him as a running back.
Great athlete.
But with yep. But with and also Matt Breida, a very good point. But with Malcolm Perry, man, he's been literally doing anything asked of him. He was a quarterback in college. He's got that running back type of elusiveness, but lately he's been tested out in the slot, and that's been well known about and well talked about. So a lot of different options. I think again, Matt Breida, one of the fastest guys in the NFL. So they've got some in-house options to play with there at the slot.
Josh, thanks for making time for us. We really appreciate it. Safe travels to Foxborough, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, guys, anytime. Always a pleasure.
Josh Tolentino covers the Dolphins for The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter, JCT Sports, JCT Sports. Josh Tolentino, kind enough to join us here on Miller and Moulton. 2 points I want to make. And I don't think he'll mind me speaking on his behalf here. Danielson loved the late first-round pick, the corner from Auburn. I remember.
So I thought Kerwin did too. I thought Kerwin was really high on the Senior Bowl, if memory serves me right. That was the guy that Pat just loved. Yep. And the site the site I use for depth charts, there's a lot of them out there. I found this site a few years ago. It's called ourlads.com. It's kind of my go-to when I have someone on. So we're doing camp and I can look at a depth chart. For the record, looking at the Dolphins depth chart, Solomon Kinley, the guard he talked about, locked in right now as their guard, and the corner from Auburn is their nickelback right now. So these are guys that are going to see time right from the get-go, according to everybody, just to back up what Josh was talking about in that. And Josh works with The Athletic, and I want to point that out because they just took $58 out of my account to renew the other day, and I felt really good about it, David. I got it on the cheap with the discount, but when they took that out, I said, okay.
Well, think about the Dolphins at corner. Howard, they spent the big money on Jones, and then this first-round pick's their slot corner, their nickel corner, if you will. Dolphins are great at the corner position. Dolphins right now are a mess at the safety position. They need the third-rounder from Texas to really be able to play sooner rather than later. But they're set at corner, knock on wood, for a while.
Their defense is not just good. They've got some depth on defense now with their draft picks. As you mentioned, the secondary is pretty good.
They don't have a pass rush, though. They still don't have a pass rush, which, they're not a winning team yet. They're not. Their offensive line's very inexperienced, and we don't even know if those guys are good yet. They don't have a pass rush. They don't have depth at receiver, don't have depth at running back even. I mean, the Dolphins are 2 years away from being a playoff team. They really are. All right. But I actually like more of the moves that they're making as opposed to not, if you know what I mean. I actually think that Chris Greer and company are making far more good decisions than bad right now, which hasn't always been the case. Let's be honest.
Right now, Miami, you can say we're not Jacksonville. Thank God.
No, you are not. And they still have a host of draft picks coming the next year or two. Josh Tolentino joining us here on Miller and Moulton. The good, the bad, and the ugly. A reminder, vote in our poll question, millerandmoulton.com. Which of these Florida teams this year has the best chance at a championship? Bucks, Lightning, Heat, Rays.
And David, I just want to give you a quick update on the poll question. Because this morning at 6:27, I responded to a 9:43 p.m. text and just said done with that question. At 8:14, he got back to me with a hell yes and followed up with said, I heard David say, once again, name in a city.
Yeah.
Brian in Atlanta is responsible for our poll question.
Yes.
I don't know if his name's Brian or if he's in Atlanta, but that's what he put down.
Okay. That's all right. At least you didn't go the alliteration route. If you're going to lie, don't do like Al in Albany. Don't give me that. At least you're Brian in Atlanta. It has a better chance of sounding true. I appreciate it. You're placating the old guy. Thank you. Miller
and David a self-addressed stamp envelope, and he'll return your letter to you.
Right, and we can meet at the post office. Miller and Moulton. The good, the bad, and the ugly next. Thanks for listening. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Speaking of the effing post office, I hate that place. And apparently, we ran out of stamps over the weekend. I didn't even know we had stamps to run out of.
Okay.
My mother-in-law's birthday was this week, so I had to send her a birthday card that my daughter made for her. And, the wife had it out, ran out of stamps, so I had to go to the post office. They're 55 cents a piece now.
Yes.
Cost me $55 for 100 stamps. $55.
Right.
And I had to pay for it. I don't even like stamps.
Yep.
And what really sucked is the 100 only comes in the roll. I can't get the goofy, stupid stamps because I was going to really F with my wife and get the most messed up stamps I could get her.
And you got the flags.
Yeah, because that's the one that comes in the big roll. That's all you can get.
Right. Oh, I know, Mark. I'm big at the post office. Oh, I know. I know what lines are what. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's no mine. I have a little one. There's one line.
Right.
And
I know yours.
The people are pretty efficient there. I like the people that work there. They're all pretty nice.
There's a guy who worked there who he used to listen to us all the time in the first act. He's lost like 100 pounds. He looks fantastic last time I saw him.
We could do a whole show about the people that you've come across that listen to their show that you know more about their personal history than you do about your child. I'm joking.
Close. Close. I know. Put it this way: no more than some people I work with. Yep. And I don't mean you.
Wake up with Miller and Moulton weekdays at 6 a.m.
What do I got to do? I got to be in a meeting today at 9 a.m.
See, you no. So you didn't answer this. Everyone else has answered, but you. They wanted to have a half hour either today or tomorrow after the show.
Oh,
and if it doesn't, and they said if it doesn't work, we'll do it after Labor Day.
Great opportunity, great pay.
But yeah.
Great work environment.
Did you not get it? Because
I probably did, David. I've had yesterday. I kind of had a lot going on, and the last thing I cared about was my effing emails.
Right.
I was on the golf course.
Well, I know it was a busy day,
and I'm not going to respond to anybody when I'm on the golf course.
John called me and said, "Hey, there's this guy who wants to have a conference call with the two of you." And I go, "Well, Mark's playing golf." I go, "Now he pretty much just got done. Now I go, good luck." I said, "I'm around, but good luck."
I called John back, and then he didn't answer. So.
A big part of enjoying a good bike ride are all the sights you see along the way.
So when David and I both developed cataracts, it didn't take long for us to do something about it.
Turns out some of the best cataract surgeons in the world are right here in our area at Community Eye Center.
We really care about improving people's lives by improving their vision.
Dr. Spalding and Dr. Spatafora really do care about helping people, and we're so glad they helped us.
They're excited. We share in that excitement. It makes us feel great about what we do.
Hi, this is Dr. Scheibel from Community Eye Center. My partner, Dr. Spatafora, and I want to remind everybody, don't be a spreader. The coronavirus.
Don't be a spreader.
Wow.
Particles fit on the head of a pin. As we run around in our trucks and cars and play golf and go fishing and go to work and do the things we like to do, we are spreading the virus. The virus can only move with us. Over 65, diabetes, COPD. All these folks will be hurt severely by this virus.
You know, the hit parade, diabetes, COPD, one hit after another.
Yes, to the worst.
It's the worst thing that ever happened to anybody ever.
Prepare yourself and hide the women and children. This is Mark Miller's Good, Bad, and Ugly on Fox Sports Radio. Your life.
What an incredible good this is, for the record. We go to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and everybody knows by now how badly that town was hit by Hurricane Laura. When a mandatory evacuation was ordered, well, people took action, but 19 of the newest residents of the town couldn't. They were all newborn babies. And their first days are spent, some were spent in the neonatal intensive care unit. The members of the staff of the Lake Charles Hospital were adamant. If the babies couldn't be evacuated safely, they'd remain behind with them until the danger passed. So Dr. Juan Bacino, along with 14 nurses, 2 neonatal nurse practitioners, 3 respiratory therapists, stayed behind caring for the newborns in shifts as the storm raged through the night. That is absolutely incredible. Not that I'm surprised, because that's what they do. But you shouldn't even be surprised by this stuff. But man, oh man, that is something. For the bad, we go way across the pond to the United Arab Emirates, where thank goodness that they were around to help, because a donkey was spotted wandering loose with a plastic chair stuck around its head and neck. Man was driving to his farm when he spotted the donkey wandering with a plastic chair stuck around his neck and face. And, donkeys can kick and do other things. So it took a group to get the chair off. A video of the rescue shows him using a handsaw to cut through the chair while his helpers hold the animal still. Once the chair was removed, it had dug into the animal's skin, leaving wounds. So they disinfected the wounds. Donkey good, rescuers good, David. All well that ends well. And finally, the ugly, we go to California, where John Kenyon was fishing with family members in the Sacramento River when he reeled in an unexpected object, a pipe bomb, and a live pipe bomb.
Hello. Are you jerking my bobber?
The bomb was, that's when his father-in-law caught another pipe bomb. Both were live. They were safely detonated.
Where was this
They
again?
think in the Sacramento River, they think people were trying to use the pipe bombs to blow up salmon, knocking them out and having them float up and take them.
Well, that's not fishing. Come on now.
It's catching.
I mean,
that's
exactly. It's catching.
I'm all for catching.
But not with a pipe bomb.
And that is the good, the bad, and the ugly on this September 3rd, 2020.
Miller and Moulton. And yes, for those of you that did send us the tweet, Guillermo and a few others who retweeted, we did mention the Publix cashier who chastised the person on the other end of the state who had more than 10 items.
My hero.
Yes. We gave them their own little moment in the show. They weren't just the good, the bad, and the ugly. We gave them even more than that. We gave them their props, if you know what I mean.
The real good today, and we played it during the break, Vin Scully is on Twitter. And I don't know if there can be much else in this world, David, that can make me happier than Vin on Twitter. I mean, there's part of me that wants to just cue this up so that the last 42 seconds of the show today is Vin's opening tweet.
Well, go find him on social media. And if anyone ever takes Vin Scully to task about anything, you have our permission to just unleash the hounds.
Hummel them.
Yes. We do have college football tonight. All right. There is a ESPN3 game, Central Arkansas and UAB. But on CBS Sports Network, Mark, at 9 o'clock is South Alabama and Southern Miss. So there you have it. A couple of college football games with betting lines tonight. Got it?
Southern Miss, it looks like they're 13 and a half or 10-point favorite. Yeah, they're a 10-point favorite.
Yeah. So NHL tonight, Islanders Flyers game 6, Golden Knights Canucks game 6. I think both series end tonight.
You think both end tonight?
Yeah.
I think you're right on the Flyers. I don't know what happened there. They had it going on, but they do what they do in the playoffs. They lost their way.
The new $3 hotcake breakfast sandwich.
All right, you guys have a good day.
You too, Jero.
Thank you, Jero.
And your eggs fluffy. A full breakfast nestled between two sweet hotcakes. At only $3, the new hotcake breakfast sandwich is almost too good.
Thanks, everybody.
Wake up, you're happy with the new hotcake. Offer valid for
Thank you, Juan.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Juan.
new spicy Western bacon cheeseburger. Cheeseburger with charbroiled beef, crispy bacon and onion rings, and topped with tangy barbecue sauce. But we added.
So do you have a half hour tomorrow?
I can do it right now. I just didn't know we were doing it at 9. I mean, I would just love